The waitress locked the restaurant door from the inside, her hands trembling as she turned the deadbolt with a loud click. The festive noise of the street outside was instantly muffled, leaving only the hum of the empty dining room and the terrified look in her eyes. I stood there confused, my hand still reaching for the phone I had left on table 4. "Mr. Payne," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thumping of my own heart. "I am going to show you the security footage from above your table, but you have to promise me something. Promise me you won't pass out when you see what your family did while you were in the bathroom. What I saw on that grainy screen didn't just make me want to collapse. It made me realize that the chest pains I had been feeling for weeks weren't old age. They were murder. Before I tell you how I survived my own assassination and took down the people I loved most, please tell me in the comments where you are watching this story from. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut off a family member to save your own life. My name is Langston Payne. I am 71 years old, and if you saw me walking down the street in my faded flannel shirt and my oil-stained work boots, you would think I was just another retired mechanic scraping by on a pension. That is exactly what I want people to think. That is exactly what my son-in-law Hunter Sterling thought as we sat in the most expensive steakhouse in the city for my birthday dinner. The tablecloth was white linen, the kind that stains if you look at it wrong. The silverware was heavy polished silver, and there was Hunter sitting across from me looking like he owned the place. He was 32, white handsome, in that slick manufactured way, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. Next to him was Zola, my only daughter. She looked beautiful but tired. Her eyes kept darting between her husband and me, nervous like a referee waiting for a fight to break out. Hunter swirled his wine glass, a vintage Cabernet he had ordered without asking the price. He looked at my hands, rough and calloused from 40 years of fixing engines resting on the pristine tablecloth. Langston, Hunter said, his voice loud enough for the next table to hear. "You really should have worn something else. This place has a dress code. I had to slip the maitre d' a 50 just to get you in here." I looked down at my clean button-down shirt. It was ironed. It was decent. It just wasn't designer. "I am comfortable, Hunter," I said quietly. "The food tastes the same regardless of what shirt I am wearing." Hunter let out a short, cruel laugh. "That is the problem with your generation, Langston. You are comfortable with mediocrity. Zola and we are building an empire. Image is everything. That is why Sterling Tech is going to revolutionize the market next month." Sterling Tech, his startup, the company that had burned through 3 rounds of funding and produced nothing but fancy business cards and debt. I knew this because I know how to read a balance sheet better than he thinks. But I said nothing. I just cut my steak. Throughout the meal, the insults came like small, precise cuts. He made fun of my old pickup truck parked outside among the luxury sedans. He made fun of the way I pronounced the French names on the menu. He treated me not like the elder of the family, but like an embarrassing pet they had to take out for a walk. Zola just sat there picking at her salad, offering weak smiles, but never once defending me. That hurt more than Hunter's words. She was my Zola, the girl I had raised on my own after her mother passed. Now she was just Mrs. Sterling, a shadow of the strong woman she used to be. Then came the bill. The waiter placed the black leather folder on the table. Hunter snatched it up with a dramatic flourish. "Don't worry about it, Langston," he said, pulling out a platinum credit card that shined under the chandelier lights. "This is on me. Consider it your birthday gift. Since I know things are tight for you, things were not tight for me. I own the land my small house sits on, and that land is worth $4 million. I have $15 million sitting in diversified trust funds that I built over decades of real estate investment and careful saving. But Hunter didn't know that. To him, I was just a mechanic with a paid-off shack." The waiter took the card and walked away. A few minutes later, he returned. The smile on his face was tight, professional, but apologetic. "I am sorry, sir," the waiter said softly to Hunter. The card was declined. Hunter's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. He snatched the card back. "That is impossible. There is a $50,000 limit on this. Run it again. We tried it 3 times, sir. It is declined." "Do you have another form of payment?" Hunter patted his pockets, his arrogance crumbling into panic. He pulled out another card. "Try this one." "Declined," the waiter said 2 minutes later. The silence at the table was deafening. People were staring. Hunter looked at Zola. "Honey, do you have your card?" Zola looked down. "You told me not to bring it, Hunter. You said you maxed it out on the server equipment last week." Hunter slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. My bank is incompetent. I will have their heads for this. I sighed. The noise was giving me a headache. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a thick rubber-banded roll of cash. It wasn't pretty. The bills were worn, some were crumpled, but they were real. I peeled off 5 $100 bills and placed them on the tray. "Keep the change, son," I told the waiter. Hunter stared at the cash like it was dirty laundry. He leaned in, his voice a hiss of pure venom. "Look at you," he spat, pulling out wads of cash like a drug dealer or a beggar who got lucky. "You always have to embarrass me, don't you? You couldn't just use a card like a civilized human being. You look like a homeless man who found a wallet." I looked him in the eye. "My cash paid for your steak, Hunter. A thank you would suffice." He stood up, buttoning his jacket aggressively. "Let's go, Zola." I can't breathe in here anymore. The air is stale. They walked out without waiting for me. Zola looked back, once her eyes sad, but she followed him. She always followed him. I sat there for a moment, finishing my water. My chest felt tight. It had been feeling tight for weeks, a dull ache that I attributed to stress and old age. I rubbed my sternum, took a deep breath, and stood up. I walked out to my old truck, the cool night air feeling good against my flushed skin. I reached into my pocket for my phone to check the traffic. It wasn't there. I patted my jacket. Nothing. I must have left it on the table when I pulled out the cash. I sighed, tired to my bones, and turned back toward the restaurant. I walked back in. The hostess stand was empty. I made my way toward table 4 in the back corner. As I approached, I saw Ebony, our waitress. She was a young black woman, maybe 24, with sharp eyes and a name tag that was slightly crooked. She was clearing the table. She held my phone in her hand. "Excuse me, miss," I said. "I think that is mine." Ebony jumped. She turned around, and the look on her face stopped me cold. She didn't look relieved to return a lost item. She looked terrified. She looked around the empty dining room, then grabbed my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Mr. Payne," she said, her voice shaking. "Come with me. Now." She didn't wait for an answer. She pulled me toward the service station near the kitchen doors. She looked left, then right, then practically shoved me into a small manager's office. She locked the door from the inside. "What is going on?" I asked, pulling my arm away. "I just want my phone." Ebony ignored me. She went to the computer on the desk and started typing furiously. Her hands were shaking so bad she had to hit the backspace key 3 times. "You forgot your phone," she said, not looking at me. "But you forgot something else too. You forgot to watch your glass." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I am a law student." "Mr. Payne," she said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I work double shifts here to pay tuition. I notice things. I notice when a son-in-law treats a father like dirt, and I notice when people mess with things they shouldn't touch." She hit a final key. A video window popped up on the screen. It was black and white, grainy security footage from the camera positioned directly above table 4. "Promise me," she whispered, turning to face me. "Promise me you won't pass out. Promise me you won't scream. Because if they know I showed you this, I lose my job, and maybe worse." I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "I promise." She pressed play. On the screen, I saw myself stand up from the table. The timestamp showed it was about 40 minutes ago, right in the middle of dinner. I recognized the moment. I had excused myself to go to the restroom. As soon as I walked out of the frame, the dynamic at the table changed. Hunter stopped looking at his phone. He looked around the restaurant, scanning for waiters. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. I leaned closer to the screen. Hunter pulled out a small white paper packet. It looked like a sugar packet, but it wasn't from the table caddy. He unfolded it quickly. Then with a steady hand, he poured a white powder into my glass of iced tea. He didn't just dump it. He stirred it with his straw, then wiped the straw with his napkin to remove any residue. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the edge of the desk. It wasn't just the action that broke me. It was what happened next. Zola was sitting right there. In the video, Zola looked up from her salad. She saw him. She saw the powder go into the glass. She saw him stir it. She didn't scream. She didn't grab the glass. She didn't slap him. She looked at the glass. Then she looked at Hunter, and then she turned her head and looked out the window. Ebony turned up the volume on the speakers. The microphone quality was poor, full of background clatter, but Hunter's voice cut through it. "Drink up, old man," Hunter whispered to the empty chair where I had been sitting. Just a few more weeks of this special blend, and your heart is going to just give out, nice and quiet. Then that land is finally ours to sell. On the screen, Zola flinched. She whispered something. I had to lean my ear almost against the speaker to hear her. Hunter, are you sure this won't hurt him? He is my dad. Hunter grabbed Zola's hand. Not a romantic grab. A controlling one. He squeezed her fingers until she pulled back. We talked about this, Zola. Do you want to be poor forever? Do you want the bank to take the house? Do you want to go back to being a nobody? The old man is 71. He lived a long life. We are just speeding up nature. The digoxin builds up slowly. It looks like natural heart failure. No autopsy, no questions. Just an inheritance. Zola stayed silent. She looked at my glass again, and then she did the unforgivable. She pushed the glass slightly closer to my placemat, positioning it so I would reach for it easily when I returned. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I remembered coming back from the bathroom. I remembered taking a long, deep drink of that tea because the steak was salty. I remembered Hunter watching me, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. I remembered the chest pains starting in the car. I wasn't having heartburn. I was dying. I staggered back from the computer screen, clutching my chest. The pain was real now, sharp and terrifying. My own daughter. The girl I had braided hair for. The girl I had sat up with when she had the flu. She watched her husband poison me, and she helped him set the table for my execution. Mr. Payne Ebony grabbed my shoulders, steadying me. Breathe. You promised. You have to breathe. I gasped for air. The room was spinning. The betrayal was a physical weight heavier than the engine blocks I used to lift. They wanted my land. They wanted the $4 million beneath my feet to cover up their failures, their debts, their lies. I looked at Ebony. Her face was blurry through my watering eyes. Did I drink it all? I asked, my voice raspy. You drank half, she said. I tried to come over to refill your water to knock it over, but the manager pulled me into the kitchen to run food. By the time I got back, you were paying the bill. Half. Digoxin. I knew what that was. My wife Etta had taken it for her arrhythmia years ago. It slows the heart rate. In high doses, or if you don't need it, it causes toxicity. Nausea, confusion, cardiac arrest. Suddenly a memory slammed into me with the force of a freight train. Etta. My wife died 2 years ago. We thought it was just her heart giving out. She was found in her armchair looking peaceful. But in the weeks before she died, Hunter had been coming over a lot. He had been bringing her special herbal teas for her health. He had been so attentive. And Zola had inherited Etta's jewelry. $50,000 worth of vintage diamonds that Hunter sold 2 months later to invest in his company. Oh God, they didn't just want to kill me. They had already practiced on Etta. The room stopped spinning. A cold, hard clarity washed over me. It replaced the fear. It replaced the sadness. It replaced the fatherly love I had held for Zola for 30 years. My heart was still beating. It was irregular, it hurt, but it was beating. I looked at Ebony. Save that video, I commanded. My voice sounded different. It wasn't the voice of a retired mechanic. It was the voice of a man who had negotiated multi-million-dollar land deals in the shadows for decades. I already did, she said, pulling a small USB drive from her pocket. I made a copy. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I took the drive. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the roll of cash again. I didn't count it. I shoved the entire roll into her hand. It was probably $2,000. Take this. Go home. Do not tell anyone you showed me this. If anyone asks, I just came back from my phone and left. But Mr. Payne, you need a doctor. I am going to a doctor, I said, unlocking the door. But not the one they want me to see. And then I am going to teach my children a lesson about finance. They want my assets. They are going to get them. But not in the way they think. I walked out of the restaurant into the night air. My chest was burning, but my mind was ice. I got into my truck and started the engine. I wasn't going to the emergency room. I couldn't risk a public record yet. I was going to my private property, to the basement where I kept the equipment from my old life. I needed to purge the poison from my stomach, and then I needed to prepare for a war. As I drove, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Hunter. Hey Dad, hope you got home safe. Make sure you get plenty of rest. You looked a little tired at dinner. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't reply. I drove past the turn for my house and headed toward the one place they didn't know about. a small warehouse district on the edge of town. My real office. The game had changed. They thought they were hunting a senile old sheep. They were about to find out they had stepped into the cage of a wolf. I pulled over to the side of the road as a wave of nausea hit me. I opened the door and retched, forcing my body to expel the expensive steak and the deadly tea. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. I looked old. I looked weak. Good, I whispered to my reflection. Let them think I am dying. Let them think they won. Because a dead man is the most dangerous enemy of all. He has nothing left to lose. I put the truck in gear and drove into the darkness. The hunt was on. The old Ford engine roared like a wounded beast as I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. The road ahead was a blur of asphalt and shadows illuminated only by my flickering headlights. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not with the steady rhythm of life, but with the erratic, terrifying gallop of a chemically induced malfunction. Every beat sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through my gut. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather cracked under my fingernails. I could not go to the hospital. Not yet. A hospital meant records. It meant questions. It meant Hunter would know I had survived before I was ready to strike back. I had to handle this the way I handled everything else in my life, on my own terms. I swerved into my gravel driveway, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on the overgrown weeds I kept there to maintain appearances. My house was a small wood frame structure that looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint since the 90s. To the outside world, it was the shack of a man who had given up. To me, it was a fortress. I stumbled out of the truck, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. The night air did nothing to cool the burning fire in my veins. I fumbled with my keys, dropping them once in the dirt before managing to unlock the front door. I didn't stop to turn on the lights. I knew every inch of this house by heart. I navigated through the darkness, knocking over a stack of old newspapers until I reached the kitchen sink. It was an old porcelain basin, stained and chipped, but right now it was my only salvation. I turned the tap on full blast, the sound of rushing water filling the silence. I didn't think. I just acted. I shoved 2 fingers down my throat, triggering the gag reflex with violent desperation. My body convulsed. It fought me, but I forced it to expel the poison. The expensive steak, the vintage wine, and the deadly white powder Hunter had stirred into my tea all came rushing out. I retched until my stomach was empty, until my throat was raw and burning, until I was dry, heaving over the drain. I turned my face up to the faucet, letting the cold well water wash over my mouth and face. I collapsed onto the linoleum floor, gasping for air, my chest heaving as I tried to calm the chaotic rhythm of my heart. I lay there in the dark, shivering on the cold floor, waiting to see if I would die or if I had bought myself a few more days of life. As the physical agony began to subside into a dull, throbbing ache, a different kind of pain began to take hold. It started in the back of my mind and spread like a dark stain. It was a memory I had suppressed for 2 years because it hurt too much to look at it directly. But now, lying on the kitchen floor with the taste of bile and betrayal in my mouth, I couldn't look away. I closed my eyes and I saw her. Etta. My beautiful Etta. We had been married for 40 years. She was the only person who knew the truth about our wealth, the only one who knew that the mechanic shop was just a hobby and that our real money came from the commercial real estate empire we had built in the shadows. 2 years ago, Etta started getting sick. It wasn't anything specific at first, just fatigue, dizziness. She would complain that her heart felt like a bird trapped in a cage fluttering wildly against her ribs. I remembered the day she died. I was sitting right here in this kitchen. Hunter had come over that morning. He was so helpful back then. He brought Etta a smoothie from that expensive organic place downtown. He said it was full of antioxidants to help her strength. I remembered watching him hand it to her. I remembered the way he smiled, that tight, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Here you go, Mom Etta," he had said. "Drink this up. It will help with the palpitations." Etta had smiled at him. She loved that boy. She loved him because Zola loved him. She drank the smoothie. 2 hours later, she was gone. The doctor said it was sudden cardiac arrest. They said at her age 68 these things happen. They said her heart just gave out. We didn't request an autopsy. Why would we? It was a natural tragedy, or so I thought. But now lying here with the same exact symptoms Etta had described in her final weeks, The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a horrifying clarity. The nausea, the yellow halos I was seeing around the streetlights on the drive home, the erratic heartbeat. These weren't just signs of heart failure, they were classic signs of digoxin toxicity. Hunter hadn't just tried to kill me tonight. He had killed Etta. He had murdered my wife in cold blood right in front of me, and I had thanked him for bringing her a drink. The realization made me want to vomit again, but there was nothing left in my stomach. A low, guttural sound escaped my throat, a mix of a sob and a growl. He killed her. He killed the love of my life because he was impatient. He killed her because he thought she was the gatekeeper to our money. And when she died and the money didn't flow into Zola's accounts the way he expected, he decided to come for me. He was a serial killer. And my daughter, my Zola, was sleeping next to him every night. Did she know about Etta? The question was a knife in my heart. She had watched him poison me tonight. She had helped him. Had she helped him kill her own mother too? I remembered Zola crying at the funeral, clinging to Hunter's arm. Was that grief, or was it guilt? I squeezed my eyes shut, tears leaking out to mix with the water on the floor. I had raised a monster, or at least I had raised a girl who was weak enough to let a monster take the leash. The vibration of my phone in my pocket jolted me back to the present. The buzzing sound against the linoleum floor was loud in the quiet house. I reached into my pocket with a shaking hand and pulled it out. The screen lit up the dark kitchen. Hunter Sterling. He was calling. Of course he was calling. He wanted to know if the deed was done. He wanted to know if he should start planning the funeral or if he needed to come over here and finish the job with a pillow. I stared at the name on the screen. My first instinct was to crush the phone in my hand. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to drive over there and tear him apart with my bare hands, but I couldn't, not yet. I was playing a game of chess against a man who thought he was playing solitaire. If I revealed my hand now, he would run. He would hide the money he had already stolen. He would destroy the evidence. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to think he was winning. I cleared my throat. I took a deep breath, trying to force my voice to sound weak, to sound like a dying man. I swiped to answer and put the phone to my ear. "Hello," I rasped. Langston Hunter's voice was too loud, too cheerful. "Hey, I just wanted to check on you. You left the restaurant in such a hurry. Zola and I were worried. Did you get home okay?" I let out a groan, genuine pain mixed with performance. "Yeah," I said, my voice trembling. "I made it. I don't feel so good, Hunter. My chest, it feels heavy." There was a pause on the other line, a silence that was heavy with anticipation. I could almost hear him smiling. "Oh no," Hunter said, his voice dropping to a tone of mock concern. "That doesn't sound good. Did you take the supplements I left on your counter last week? The ones for your circulation?" The supplements. Another trap I hadn't noticed. Bottles of pills he had brought over, claiming they were high-end vitamins. I hadn't taken them mostly because I didn't believe in pills, but now I knew what they likely were. I took them, I lied. I took a double dose because I felt weak. "I just want to sleep, Hunter." "I am so tired," Good Hunter said. "Rest is the best thing for you. Just lie down, Langston, close your eyes. Don't worry about anything. Zola and I will come check on you in the morning." He wasn't coming to check on me. He was coming to find a body. "Okay," I whispered. Tell her I love her." "I will," he said. "Good night, Langston." The line went dead. I let the phone drop from my hand. He thought it was over. He thought the old mechanic was fading away into the dark. I sat up. The dizziness hit me, but I fought through it. I wasn't fading away. I was waking up. I grabbed the edge of the counter and hauled myself to my feet. I swayed for a moment, waiting for the world to stop spinning. Then I walked out of the kitchen. I didn't go to my bedroom. I walked to the back of the house, to the small closet under the stairs that looked like it held nothing but old coats and cleaning supplies. I pushed aside a rack of moth-eaten jackets and knelt down. I pulled up the corner of the dusty rug to reveal a keypad embedded in the floorboards. It was military grade, installed 20 years ago by a contractor who owed me a favor and knew how to keep his mouth shut. I typed in the code. The floor hissed as the hydraulic seals released. A section of the floor dropped an inch and slid back, revealing a set of concrete stairs descending into the darkness. This was the only part of the house Hunter had never seen. This was where the real Langston Payne lived. I descended the stairs, the motion sensor lights flickering on as I went. The air down here was cool and filtered, smelling of paper and ozone. The room was lined with metal filing cabinets. In the center was a heavy steel desk with a secure computer terminal and a large fireproof safe. I went straight to the safe. My fingers flew over the combination dial. The heavy door swung open with a smooth, well-oiled silence. Inside there were no stacks of cash. I didn't keep cash here. There were deeds. Titles to commercial plazas, apartment complexes, and undeveloped land across 3 counties. There were bearer bonds, and there was a thick manila envelope labeled Medical. Etta. I pulled out the envelope. I had kept every record, every prescription, every note from her doctor. I had kept them because I missed her. Now they were evidence. I opened the file and spread the papers on the desk. I looked at the dates. I looked at the decline in her health. It matched perfectly with the timeline of Hunter's failing business ventures. Every time he needed cash, Etta got sicker. I slammed my fist on the desk. The rage was a cold, solid thing in my gut now. It gave me strength. It sharpened my mind. I reached for the secure landline on my desk. It was an untraceable number I used for business dealings. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 6 months. It rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. Desmond Vance, the voice said. It was 3 a.m., but Desmond sounded like he was sitting at his desk in a suit. He was the best lawyer in the state, a man who had fought in the trenches of civil rights litigation before making a fortune in corporate law. He was also the only man on earth I trusted with my life. Desmond, I said. It is Langston. Langston. Desmond's tone shifted from professional to concerned instantly. It is the middle of the night. Is everything all right? No, I said. They killed Etta Desmond, Hunter and Zola. They poisoned her. And tonight, they tried to kill me. There was a silence on the line. A heavy, dangerous silence. Desmond didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't ask if I was hallucinating. He knew me. He knew I didn't make calls like this unless I had proof. Are you safe? Desmond asked. I am in the bunker, I said. I purged the poison. I am alive. But they think I am dying. Good, Desmond said. Let them think that. What do you need? I need you here at first light, I said. Bring the private medical examiner you used for the Johnson case. We are going to exhume Etta's files, and then we are going to exhume the truth. And Desmond. Yes, Langston. Bring the paperwork for the Sterling Tech loan. The one I secretly backed through the shell company. You want to call in the debt? No, I said, staring at the photo of Etta on my desk. I don't want to call it in. I want to use it as a noose. Hunter thinks he is going to inherit a kingdom tomorrow. I want him to wake up and realize he doesn't even own the shirt on his back. I understand, Desmond said. I will be there at 6 a.m. Lock the door, old friend. I hung up the phone. I looked around my underground office. The walls were covered in maps of the properties I owned. This was my empire. Hunter thought he could take it from me with a packet of white powder and a smile. I reached into the back of the safe and pulled out a small black box. I opened it. Inside was a .38 caliber revolver. I hadn't touched it since I retired from security work in the 80s. I checked the cylinder. It was loaded. I placed the gun on the desk next to Etta's medical records. I wasn't going to shoot Hunter. That would be too easy. That would be too quick. But I was going to make sure that if he ever stepped foot in this house uninvited again, he would understand the definition of fear. I sat back in my chair and watched the security monitors that showed every angle of the property above. The house was dark and quiet. But the war had just begun. They killed my wife. They tried to kill me. And now it was my turn. The sun had barely breached the horizon when the pounding on my front door shattered the morning silence. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the heavy, entitled hammering of someone who thought they owned the place. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in my hand, my eyes fixed on the driveway. I didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. The roar of a German engine in my quiet working-class neighborhood was unmistakable. Hunter was back, and this time he hadn't come alone. I unlocked the door just as Hunter raised his fist to pound again. He was wearing a tracksuit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. His face flushed with a mix of impatience and artificial concern. Zola stood behind him, looking pale and refusing to meet my eyes. But it was the third man who made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He was tall, thin, with graying hair slicked back and a black medical bag gripped in his hand. Dr. Pierce. I recognized him instantly. He was the concierge doctor Hunter had hired for Etta in her final weeks. He was the man who had signed her death certificate without even listening to her heart. the man who had looked me in the eye at her funeral and told me it was for the best. Seeing him standing on my porch smelling of antiseptic and expensive cologne was like seeing the Grim Reaper in a silk tie. Dad Hunter pushed past me into the living room, not waiting for an invitation. "You sounded terrible on the phone last night. Zola and I couldn't sleep. We were so worried about your heart that we brought Dr. Pierce to give you a checkup right here. No waiting rooms. VIP treatment." I tightened my grip on the doorframe. VIP treatment. The kind they give to a horse before they put it down. "I am fine, Hunter," I said, making my voice sound thin and wavering. "Just a little indigestion. You didn't need to come all this way." "Nonsense," Dr. Pierce said, stepping inside. His voice was smooth, oily. "Cardiac events in men your age can present as indigestion, Mr. Payne. Hunter tells me you have been experiencing shortness of breath. We need to be proactive. I have a new stimulant injection that will stabilize your rhythm immediately." An injection. They weren't waiting for the pills to work anymore. They wanted to speed up the timeline. If he injected me with a high dose of digoxin right here in my living room, I would be dead before I hit the floor. Cardiac arrest, natural causes, case closed. I looked at Zola. "Honey," I asked, my voice trembling just enough. "Do you think your old dad needs a shot? I hate needles. You know that." Zola looked at her shoes. "It is for your own good, Dad. Please, just let him help you." She was gone. My daughter was gone, replaced by this hollow shell who would trade her father's life for a cleared credit card balance. "Sit down," Langston Hunter ordered, pointing to his favorite armchair, the one Etta used to sit in. "Doctor, get your kit ready." I shuffled toward the kitchen, my posture hunched. "I need some water first," I mumbled. "My throat is dry. I need to take my morning pills." Hunter rolled his eyes. "Fine. Hurry up." I walked into the kitchen. On the counter sat my old electric kettle, the water inside already boiling for the tea I hadn't made. I clicked it on again. The rumble of the boiling water was the only sound in the room. I reached into the cupboard and grabbed a ceramic mug. I also reached into the pocket of my robe, my fingers brushing against the small orange prescription bottle I had prepared an hour ago. It was filled with harmless multivitamins, but the label was a perfect match for the heart medication Hunter had left on my counter last week. I walked back into the living room, carrying the kettle in one hand and the mug in the other. Dr. Pierce was kneeling by the armchair, a syringe already in his hand. He flicked the needle, a drop of clear liquid spurting out. "Come on, Mr. Payne," Pierce said, impatience leaking into his professional tone. "This will only pinch a little." I approached him. My steps were slow shuffling. As I got closer, I let my hands start to shake. The kettle wobbled. "I don't know, doctor," I whined. "I feel dizzy." Hunter stepped forward, aggressive. "Just sit down, old man. Stop stalling." He grabbed my arm to force me into the chair. It was the excuse I needed. I let my knees buckle. I flailed my arm, the one holding the kettle full of scalding water. "Oops," I cried out. The lid of the kettle flew off. A stream of boiling water cascaded down, not onto me, but directly onto Dr. Pierce's expensive Italian loafers and the hand holding the syringe. Pierce screamed. It was a high, undignified sound. He dropped the syringe and scrambled backward, clutching his scalded hand. The needle rolled under the sofa. "You clumsy fool," Hunter shouted, jumping back to avoid the splash. "Look what you did." "Oh no," I stammered, backing away, putting a hand to my mouth in mock horror. "I am so sorry. My hands. They just don't work like they used to." Pierce was on the floor, his face red with pain and rage. He glared at me, and for a second the mask of the professional doctor slipped, revealing the thug underneath. "Get me ice," Pierce snarled at Zola. While Zola ran to the kitchen and Hunter knelt to check on his accomplice, I saw my opening. On the coffee table next to Pierce's open medical bag was a fresh bottle of pills. Hunter must have placed it there when they walked in. "Use these if he refuses the shot," I heard Hunter whisper earlier. I leaned over the table, pretending to steady myself. With a sleight of hand I had learned playing cards in the barracks 40 years ago, I swiped the bottle Hunter had brought and replaced it with the dummy bottle from my pocket. It took less than a second. Hunter stood up, his face twisted in anger. He looked at the wet floor, the groaning doctor, and then at me. "This is useless," Hunter spat. "He is too far gone. He can't even hold a cup." He grabbed the bottle of pills from the table, my bottle of vitamins, and shoved it into my chest. "Fine. If you can't take the shot, you take these. 2 a day. Do you hear me? 2 a day, or you will end up in a hospital bed where you can't spill things. I clutched the bottle to my chest, nodding rapidly. Yes, Hunter, I promise. 2 a day. Get him out of here, Hunter barked at Zola, pointing at the doctor. We are leaving. I can't stand the smell of this place. They helped the limping doctor out to the car. Hunter stopped in the doorway, looking back at me with eyes cold enough to freeze hell. Don't forget Langston. Take your medicine. It is the only thing keeping you alive. I watched them drive away, the dust settling in the morning light. As soon as the car disappeared around the bend, I straightened my back. The shaking stopped. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I went to the front door and locked it. Then I went to the sofa and retrieved the syringe Pierce had dropped. I put it in a plastic bag. I picked up the bottle of pills Hunter had originally placed on the table, the real poison, and put it in my pocket. I didn't wait. I went out the back door to my truck. I drove 40 minutes into the countryside to an old, nondescript barn that looked abandoned. It wasn't. Inside was a state-of-the-art chemical testing lab run by Silas, a man who had served with me in Vietnam. Silas didn't ask questions. He just asked for results. I handed him the bottle and the syringe. Tell me what is in these, Silas, and tell me how fast it kills. Silas put a sample under the mass spectrometer. We waited in silence, the hum of the machines, the only sound. 10 minutes later, a graph appeared on the screen. Silas whistled low and long. Langston, he said, turning to me, you have enemies. I know, I said. What is it? This isn't just heart medication, Silas said, tapping the screen. This is digoxin, but it is concentrated. And it is mixed with a diuretic. What does that mean? It means it is designed to kill you and flush the evidence out of your system at the same time. If you took 2 of these pills a day like they told you, your potassium levels would crash. Your heart would go into arrhythmia. You would be dead in 3 days, maybe 4. And any standard autopsy would just look like an old man's tired heart giving out. It is a professional hit, Langston. I stared at the graph. My wife's face floated in my memory. They had given this to her. They had watched her fade day by day, pretending to care for her while they murdered her. Can you prove it? I asked. I can write a report, Silas said. But this is just a substance. You need to prove they gave it to you. I have a video, I said, and now I have the weapon. I took the report Silas printed out. I walked back to my truck. The morning sun was bright, but my world was dark. They wanted me dead in 3 days. I checked my watch. I had time. I pulled out my phone and dialed Desmond. We have the cause of death for Etta, I said when he answered. It is confirmed. Now I need to see the money trail. I am going to the bank. Desmond paused. Be careful, Langston. If they see you moving money, they will panic. Let them panic, I said, starting the engine. Panic makes people make mistakes, and I am counting on it. I drove toward the city. The grieving widower was dead. The soldier had returned, and he was going to burn their world to the ground. I parked my rusted truck in the furthest corner of the First National Bank lot, right between a gleaming Mercedes and a brand new Tesla. The contrast was deliberate. I smoothed down my grease-stained work shirt, adjusted my faded baseball cap, and walked toward the glass revolving doors. The security guard, a young man who looked like he spent more time at the gym than reading books, stepped into my path before I could even reach the handle. Can I help you, sir? He asked, his eyes scanning my worn boots and the oil smudges on my jeans. The ATM is outside around the corner. I looked at him. I didn't blink. I am not here for the ATM, son. I am here to see Mr. Henderson. Is he in his office? The guard let out a scoff that was half laugh, half sneeze. Mr. Henderson, the branch manager, he is in a meeting, and I don't think he has time for soliciting. Tell him Langston Payne is here. I said, my voice low and level. Tell him I want to talk about the vault. The guard hesitated. There was something in my tone, a residue of the authority I used to wield when I commanded men in the field, that made him uneasy. He muttered into his radio. A moment later, his eyes went wide. He stepped aside, holding the door open with a sudden, jerky respect. Mr. Henderson says to come right up, sir. I walked through the lobby. The air conditioning was cold, smelling of money and floor wax. I felt the eyes of the tellers and customers on me. They saw an old black man who looked like he cleaned the floors. They didn't know that I owned 6% of the bank's regional stock through a shell corporation. They didn't know that the land my shack sat on was the single most valuable undeveloped asset in the county. Mr. Henderson met me on the door of his office. He was a small, nervous man who sweated even in the winter. He ushered me in and closed the blinds immediately. "Mr. Payne," he said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, "to what do I owe this honor? We usually handle your affairs over the secure line." I sat in the leather chair, ignoring the way my dirty pants contrasted with the upholstery. "I need to see the activity on the account ending in 459, I said. "The joint account I set up for property maintenance." Henderson typed on his keyboard. His face went pale. "Ah, yes, that account." "Show me," I ordered. He turned the monitor. I leaned forward. My heart, already damaged by the poison, gave a painful thud. There was a withdrawal from 3 weeks ago. $200,000. It was a home equity line of credit taken out against the north pasture of my farm. "Who authorized this?" I asked, though the cold pit in my stomach told me I already knew the answer. "You did?" Sir Henderson said, pulling a paper file from his drawer. "Or at least the paperwork says you did. Your daughter Zola brought it in. She said you were too sick to come in person." I looked at the signature on the document. It was a good forgery. It had the loop on the L and the sharp cross on the T, but there was a tremor at the end of the N that wasn't mine. It was the tremor of a daughter betraying the man who had worked double shifts to buy her prom dress. Zola had forged my name. She had mortgaged the land I promised her mother I would never sell. "Where did the money go?" I asked. My voice was calm, but inside I was screaming. Did she use it to fix the roof, to pay medical bills? Henderson clicked a few more keys. "No, sir. It was transferred immediately. 100,000 went to an account registered to Sterling Tech LLC. The other 100,000 went to, well, sir, it went to an offshore entity called Azure Gaming. Sterling Tech was Hunter's failed company. Azure Gaming was an online high-stakes poker site. So that was it. They weren't killing me for an inheritance to build a future. They were killing me to cover a gambling debt." "Dig deeper, Henderson," I said. "Run a credit check on Hunter Sterling. I want to know who he owes." "I can't do that without his consent, sir. It is illegal." I leaned forward. "Henderson, I own the building we are sitting in. I can have you managing a branch in a vending machine kiosk by tomorrow morning. Run the check." Henderson swallowed hard. He typed. His eyes widened behind his glasses. "Oh my. This is bad. What is it? Mr. Sterling has outstanding liabilities totaling $500,000. But these aren't bank loans, Mr. Payne. These are private promissory notes. High interest, short term." "Loan sharks," I said. "Yes, sir. And the due date for the balloon payment is the last day of this month." I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was the 20th. Hunter had 10 days. That was why he was rushing. That was why Dr. Pierce had tried to inject me. That was why they needed me dead now. If I didn't die and the land wasn't sold by the 30th, Hunter wasn't just going to lose his company. He was going to lose his kneecaps, or worse. And Zola knew. She had to know. She forged the signature to buy him time. She was willing to kill her father to save her husband from his own stupidity. "Mr. Payne," Henderson said, his voice shaking. "This is fraud. Zola committed a felony. We should call the police. I can freeze the accounts. I can have them arrested today." I stared at the forged signature. I thought about Zola when she was 5, sitting on my lap, asking me to chase away the monsters under her bed. Now she was the monster. If I arrested them now, they would go to jail, yes, but they would blame me. They would play the victims. They would say I was a cruel old man who wouldn't help his family. "No," I said. "Do not call the police." "But sir, the money, let it go," I said. "In fact, I want you to approve the pending application I see here on the screen." I pointed to a blinking notification. Hunter had applied for another business loan, a final desperate Hail Mary for another $100,000 to keep the sharks at bay for a few more weeks. "You want me to give him more money?" Henderson looked at me like I was insane. "Yes," I said. "Approve the loan, but I want you to change the terms. Change them how I want the lender to be changed from the bank to LP Holdings. That is my private investment firm, and I want a collateral clause added, a specific one." I dictated the terms. Henderson typed them out, his fingers trembling. "If Hunter Sterling defaults on this payment by even 1 hour ownership of Sterling Tech and all associated intellectual property as well as any personal assets, joint or severed transfers immediately and irrevocably to the lender. He will never sign that," Henderson said. "It is suicide." "He is desperate," I said. "He thinks I am dying at home right now. He thinks he will have my life insurance and the land sale money in a week to pay off this loan before it is due." He thinks he is betting with house money. My money. He will sign it. Henderson printed the document. I watched the paper slide out of the tray. This wasn't just a loan. It was a trap. It was a noose, and I was greasing the rope. Send it to him, I said, standing up. Tell him the bank found a private investor who believes in his vision. Tell him the funds can be released in 24 hours if he signs digitally today. I walked out of the office. The bank lobby seemed brighter, sharper. The betrayal still hurt a dull ache in my chest that had nothing to do with the poison. But the confusion was gone. I knew the stakes. I knew the timeline. Hunter needed me dead in 10 days. I got back into my truck. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the private investigator I had hired 3 hours ago. It was a photo. It showed Hunter sitting in a coffee shop. He wasn't alone. He was holding hands with a woman who wasn't my daughter. I zoomed in. The woman was wearing scrubs. I recognized her from the hospital website I had looked at earlier. She was the head nurse for Dr. Pierce. The picture became clear. Hunter wasn't just using Zola. He was playing her too. He was sleeping with the nurse to ensure Dr. Pierce's cooperation. Zola was forging signatures and planning murders for a man who was cheating on her while she did his dirty work. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. Zola had made her choice. She chose the wolf over the shepherd. Now she was going to see what happens when the wolf gets hungry. I started the engine. I had a lunch to plan. Hunter wanted to play the loving son-in-law fine. I would give him one last meal. And while he was eating, I would close the steel jaws of the trap around his leg. I drove out of the lot, leaving the shiny Mercedes and the Tesla behind. They were just cars. I was driving a tank disguised as a pickup truck, and I was heading to war. I dialed Hunter's number just before noon the next day. My hands were steady, but my voice trembled intentionally as I spoke. "Hunter," I said, making sure to sound frail and confused. "I think it is time we talked about the land. I don't want to worry about it anymore. Can we meet for lunch? I want to settle things while I still feel lucid." I could practically hear the greed dripping from his voice when he answered. "Of course, Dad. Zola and I will clear our schedule. We can meet at the Golden Oak in an hour." It was a mid-range place, respectable but not flashy, the kind of place where business deals were made over club sandwiches. When I arrived, they were already seated in a booth near the back. Hunter was wearing a new suit, likely bought with the loan money I had secretly approved just hours before. Zola looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. I walked slowly, dragging my left leg, slightly playing the part of a man whose body was failing him. Hunter stood up, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Hey, Dad, you look... Well, you look like you need a rest. Sit down. We already ordered you the soup. Soft food is probably best right now." "Right?" I sat down heavily. "Thank you, son," I murmured. "My memory. It isn't what it used to be. I forgot where I put my keys this morning. I forgot if I fed the dog. I don't even have a dog, Hunter." Hunter chuckled, glancing at Zola with a look that said, "It's working." "Yeah, Dad, we noticed. That is why we are here. To help you. You shouldn't have to worry about complex things like property taxes and maintenance. It is too much for someone in your condition." He pushed a glass of water toward me. I didn't drink it. I wasn't taking any chances today. Throughout the meal, the insults were constant but veiled as concern. Hunter would cut me off when I started a sentence, speaking loudly as if I were deaf. "Dad, nobody needs to hear about your old truck again," he said when I mentioned I needed new tires. "Honestly, you should just scrap that junk heap. It is an eyesore. We can get you a nice, safe sedan. Or better yet, we can hire a driver once we get your finances under control." Under control meant under his control. He pulled a thick document from his briefcase. It was bound in a blue folder. "Since you asked for help, Langston, I had my lawyer draw this up last night. It is a standard power of attorney. It just gives Zola and me the ability to handle the sale of the land for you. We will put the money right into a secure account for your care. You just need to sign here, here, and here." I looked at the document. I put on my reading glasses, my hands shaking theatrically. It was exactly what I expected. A full, durable power of attorney that would give him total access to everything I owned. If I signed this, he wouldn't even need to kill me. He could just dump me in a state facility and drain my accounts dry. "I can't read this, Hunter," I said, pushing the glasses down my nose. "The letters are dancing. Is this the right paper? Are you sure this protects me?" Hunter sighed, an exaggerated sound of patience wearing thin. "Yes, Dad, it protects you. Trust me. I am a CEO. I know how contracts work. Just sign the X. He handed me a pen, an expensive Mont Blanc. I reached into my pocket. Actually, I said, fumbling around. I brought my own pen. And, oh, I think I have a copy of the deed here too. Maybe we should attach it. I pulled out a crumpled stack of papers. In the confusion of shuffling documents, knocking over a salt shaker, and apologizing profusely for my clumsiness, I performed the switch. I had practiced it all morning. The document Hunter had placed on the table slid under my menu. The document I had prepared identical in weight font and cover page slid into its place. Hunter didn't notice. He was too busy signaling the waiter to clean up the spilled salt, too busy rolling his eyes at Zola. He saw what he wanted to see, a senile old man making a mess. Here, I said, smoothing out the paper I had swapped in. Is this the line? Yes, Langston, right there. Just sign it so we can leave. I signed. I pressed down hard, etching my name onto the paper. But I wasn't signing a power of attorney. I was signing a witnessing line on a document that Hunter was about to sign as the principal. Now you, Hunter, I said, pushing the paper toward him. You have to sign to accept the responsibility. That is what the bank said. Hunter didn't even read it. He was so eager, so blindingly arrogant that he just grabbed the paper and scrawled his signature next to mine. Done, he said, snatching the document away and stuffing it into his briefcase. Finally. Now we can really take care of you. He had no idea what he had just done. He had just signed a confession of debt and a personal guarantee. The document stated that he, Hunter Sterling, acknowledged a personal debt of $5 million to LP Holdings, my company, payable immediately upon demand, collateralized by his future earnings and all personal property. He had just sold himself to me, and he thought he had won the lottery. I leaned back in the booth, the act of being frail suddenly feeling heavy. I looked at Zola. She hadn't said a word. She just watched Hunter put the papers away, a look of relief washing over her face. Zola, I said softly. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. She looked up, startled by the change in my tone. Yeah, Dad. Do you remember what your mother told you before she died? Zola frowned. What? The day she passed. I was in the kitchen. You were sitting by her bed. She held your hand. Do you remember what she asked you to do? Zola's eyes welled up. She looked down at her plate. She told me to look after you. She said you were strong, but you shouldn't be alone. She said we had to protect each other. I nodded. And do you think this is protecting me? Zola, letting your husband talk to me like I am a child, letting him rush me into signing papers while I am sick. Hunter slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Oh, stop with the guilt trip, Langston. Zola is doing exactly what her mother would have wanted, ensuring the family wealth doesn't rot away in a savings account. Etta is dead. She is gone. Bringing her up is just, it is bad luck. It is manipulative. Bad luck, I repeated. Is that what she was to you, Hunter? Bad luck? Or was she just a stepping stone you tripped over? Hunter glared at me. His eyes were cold, dead things. She was a nice lady, Langston, but she was old. People get old. They die. You shouldn't dwell on it. It makes you morbid. It makes you weak. Now finish your soup. We have appointments. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had poured poison into my wife's tea, who had poured it into mine, who had just signed his life away without reading a single word because he thought I was too stupid to trick him. I looked at Zola. She didn't defend her mother. She didn't defend me. She just shrank into the booth, letting Hunter's cruelty fill the space between us. That was the moment the last ember of hope died. I had given her a chance. I had mentioned her mother to see if there was any spark of conscience left, any remnant of the daughter I loved. But there was nothing, just fear and complicity. I stood up. I didn't use the table for support. I stood up straight, my full 6-foot height unfolding. The waiter approached with the check, but I ignored him. I am not hungry anymore, I said, my voice deep and steady. The tremor was gone, the confusion was gone, and was. Hunter looked up, surprised by the sudden change in my demeanor. Sit down, Dad. You haven't finished. I am finished, Hunter, I said. I am finished with the soup. I am finished with this conversation, and I am finished with you. I tossed a $20 bill onto the table for my share. You got what you wanted, I said, pointing to his briefcase. You have the paper. Now go do whatever it is you think you need to do. But remember this moment. Remember the way the soup tasted, because it is the last meal you will ever enjoy in peace. Hunter laughed a nervous, confused sound. What are you talking about? You are talking nonsense again. "Zola, get him to the car." I stepped away from the table before she could touch me. "Do not touch me," I said to Zola. "Not today, not ever again." I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back. I could feel their eyes on me, confused, maybe a little scared. Good. Fear was good. I walked to my truck. I took out my phone and called Desmond. "He signed it," I said. Desmond let out a low whistle. "You got him hook, line, and sinker. He thinks he has power of attorney. He actually just confessed to a $5 million debt to a shell company he doesn't know I own." "What is the next move?" Desmond asked. "Initiate the foreclosure on his house," I said. "And Desmond, send the file to the district attorney, the one about Etta. It is time to open the cold case." I hung up. The sun was shining, but I felt cold. I had just set a trap for my own family. I had just declared war on my own blood. But as I thought of Etta and the way Hunter had dismissed her memory as bad luck, the cold turned into a burning fire. They wanted a senile old man. They were about to get a general. And I wasn't going to stop until they were buried under the weight of their own greed. The neon sign above the entrance to Sterling Tech buzzed with an annoying intermittent flicker, casting a sickly blue light onto the empty pavement. It was 2 a.m. on a Thursday. According to the GPS tracker I had placed on Hunter's car, my son-in-law was currently at the Velvet Rope, a downtown nightclub where bottle service cost more than my monthly property tax. He was celebrating. He was spending the first chunk of the loan I had secretly authorized, drinking away the money he thought he had swindled from a senile old man. He had no idea that while he was popping champagne, the old man was crouching in the shadows of his office building holding a pair of wire cutters and a voltage meter. I wasn't alone. Beside me was Ray, a private investigator Desmond had recommended. Ray was a former military intelligence officer, a man who moved like smoke and spoke even less. We were dressed in black, blending into the darkness of the alleyway behind the rented office space Hunter called his headquarters. "This alarm system is a joke," I whispered, inspecting the junction box on the rear wall. "It is a consumer-grade wireless setup. He probably bought it online to save money for his suits. I didn't need to hack a code. I just needed to bridge the circuit before the sensor realized the door was open." My hands, usually covered in grease and oil, moved with the precision of a surgeon. I stripped the wire, attached the alligator clips, and watched the status light on the box turn from a blinking red to a solid, satisfied green. "We are in," I signaled to Ray. We slipped through the back door into the climate-controlled air of the office. The place smelled of new carpet and stale ambition. It was exactly what I expected. The reception area was massive with leather sofas and abstract art, but as we moved deeper, the facade crumbled. The bullpen for the employees was empty, the desks covered in dust. There were no employees. Sterling Tech was a ghost ship steered by a captain who was busy looting the cargo hold. We headed straight for Hunter's executive office. It was the only room that looked lived in. The desk was a slab of imported mahogany, cluttered with empty energy drink cans and stacks of unpaid bills. But the prize was the sleek silver laptop sitting closed in the center of the desk. Ray pulled a small device from his bag and plugged it into the laptop's USB port. "It is encrypted," Ray whispered, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. "But guys like this are arrogant. They don't use complex passwords because they don't think anyone is smart enough to catch them." He typed in a few combinations. On the third try, the screen unlocked. "What was it?" I asked. Empire, Ray muttered. "Predictable. We didn't have much time. I didn't care about his financials. I already knew he was broke. I wanted the communication logs. I wanted to see the strings being pulled." Ray opened the encrypted messaging app Hunter used. He scrolled back to the dates coinciding with my treatments from Dr. Pierce. "There," I said, pointing to a thread labeled "The Good Doctor." "Open it." Ray clicked. The chat history unfolded like a script from a horror movie. I leaned in my reading glasses, perched on my nose, and felt my stomach turn to ice. October 12th. Hunter. "The old black man is tougher than he looks. The standard dose isn't keeping him down. He was walking around the yard today." Pierce. "He has the constitution of an ox. We need to be careful. If his heart stops too suddenly without prior symptoms, the coroner might look twice." Hunter. "I don't care. Increase the diuretic. Dry him out. Make him confused. I need him pliable before the 30th. I read the words again. "The old black man. He didn't even use my name. To him, I wasn't a person. I was a stereotype. I was a stubborn animal that refused to die on schedule. Ray scrolled down. October 15th. Pierce. What about the daughter? Is she asking questions about the new pills, Hunter Zola? Please. She is so stupid she does whatever I tell her. I told her it's a proprietary blend from Switzerland. She thanked me for caring so much. She is wrapping the noose around his neck and thinks she is tying a tie. I had to look away. I gripped the edge of the mahogany desk, my knuckles turning white. He despised her. He loathed my daughter, mocking her blind loyalty while he used her to murder her own father. It took every ounce of my discipline not to smash the laptop onto the floor. Copy it, I commanded, my voice low and dangerous. Copy everything. Every text. Every email. Every picture. Ray worked fast, the progress bar on the screen moving agonizingly slow. I kept watch at the door, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the break room, the distant siren of a police car. We were almost done. The download hit 90%. Then headlights swept across the office blinds. I froze. A car had just pulled into the private lot out front. The engine cut off. A car door slammed. He is back, Ray whispered, yanking the USB drive out the second the transfer finished. We had nowhere to go. The back exit was through the main hallway and the front door was opening. I heard the heavy metallic click of the lock turning. Hunter was humming to himself a drunken off-key melody. Hide, I hissed. Ray slid under the massive desk. I looked around wildly. There was a tall metal filing cabinet in the corner, the kind used for architectural blueprints. I scrambled toward it, opening the narrow vertical locker meant for coats. I squeezed inside, pulling the metal door shut just as the office lights flickered on. I held my breath. The closet was cramped, smelling of cedar chips and Hunter's spare gym clothes. Through the thin ventilation slats, I had a sliver of a view. Hunter stumbled into the room. His tie was undone, his shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest. He looked like a man who had won the lottery and lost his soul in the same night. He didn't look at the desk. He went straight to the minibar in the corner and poured himself a glass of amber liquid. He took a long drink, then pulled his phone from his pocket. He dialed a number and put it on speaker, tossing it onto the desk, right above where Ray was hiding. "Yeah, it is me," Hunter said, his voice slurring slightly. A voice answered. It was deep-accented and cold as liquid nitrogen. "You are calling late, Sterling. Do you have my money? I got it." Hunter laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "I got the first tranche. The bank approved the expansion loan. I can wire you the interest payments tomorrow. I don't want interest." "Sterling," the voice said, "I want the principal. 500,000 by the 1st. "You will get it," Hunter shouted, pacing the room. He walked right past my hiding spot. I could smell the alcohol and expensive cologne wafting off him. "Listen to me, Vinny. The plan is in motion. The old man is fading fast. I saw him yesterday. He is a ghost." "Are you sure this time?" the voice asked. "You said that last month." "He is done," Hunter promised. "He signed the power of attorney." "Well, he thinks he did. He signed over everything. As soon as his heart stops, I liquidate the land. It is prime real estate. 4 million easy. I will pay you double just for your patience." 3 days, Sterling, the voice said. "If I don't see an obituary or a wire transfer in 3 days, I am going to come down there. And I am going to take your wife as collateral until you pay up." Hunter didn't defend Zola. He didn't threaten the man. He just laughed again. "You won't have to do that, Vinny. The old man will be dead in 3 days. I guarantee it. I will pull the plug myself if I have to." The line went dead. Hunter grabbed the bottle from the bar and took another swig straight from the neck. 3 days, he whispered to the empty room. "Die, you stubborn old mule. Just die already." He grabbed a stack of papers from the desk, probably the fake loan documents I had sent him, and turned off the lights. I waited in the dark, listening to his footsteps recede down the hallway. I heard the front door open and close. I heard his car start up and peel out of the parking lot. I didn't move for a full minute. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like clarity. He had just confirmed everything, the deadline, the motive, the total lack of humanity. He was willing to let thugs take Zola if his plan failed. I pushed open the closet door and stepped out. Ray crawled out from under the desk, brushing dust off his jacket. He looked at me, his face grim. "We got it all," Ray said, holding up a small audio recorder. "The confession, the conspiracy, The threat against your daughter. Good, I said. What do we do now? Ray asked. Do we go to the police? We have enough to put him away for attempted murder. I looked at the empty chair where Hunter had sat, envisioning him ruling over his imaginary empire. No, I said, not yet. Police means bail. Police means lawyers. Police means he gets a chance to spin the story. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. He gave us a timeline, Ray. 3 days. He thinks I will be dead in 3 days. I turned back to the investigator. I am going to make sure he is right. But the man who dies won't be Langston Payne. It will be the victim he thinks I am. What are you planning? He wants a funeral. I said, my voice hard as iron. I am going to give him one. But he is going to be the one buried in the wreckage. We left the office, leaving no trace that we had ever been there. Hunter had his 3 days. He had his loan. He had his confidence. I had the truth. And in 3 days, I was going to turn his celebration into a wake. The morning sun filtered through the dusty curtains of my living room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny suspended memories. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the hope I was desperately trying to hold on to. I had called Zola an hour ago. I told her I needed to see her alone. I told her it was about her mother's jewelry, a lie I knew would bring her running because greed had become the only language she seemed to understand. When her car pulled into the driveway, I didn't see the little girl who used to chase fireflies in the backyard. I saw a woman who looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with shadows, her shoulders hunched under invisible burdens. She walked in without knocking, her posture defensive, ready for a fight or a handout. Where is Hunter? I asked, though I knew exactly where he was. My tracker showed him at a coffee shop across town, meeting with the nurse he was sleeping with. He is busy, Zola said, throwing her purse onto the counter. He is working hard to secure our future dad, something you never seem to appreciate. What about Mom's jewelry? Did you find another box? I didn't answer immediately. I reached under the table and pulled out a manila envelope. It wasn't jewelry. It was the printout from the bank records and the chat logs Ray and I had stolen the night before. I slid it across the table toward her. I didn't call you here for diamonds, Zola. I said, my voice steady and deep. I called you here because you are my daughter. And despite everything, despite the poison in my tea and the signatures you forged, I cannot let you walk off a cliff without trying to grab your hand one last time. Zola stared at the envelope. She didn't touch it. What is this? More lectures. More guilt trips about how hard you worked. It is the truth, I said. Open it. She hesitated, her curiosity warring with her loyalty to her husband. Slowly she reached out and opened the flap. She pulled out the stack of papers. The top page was a bank statement from Hunter's private account, the one he thought was hidden. Highlighted in neon yellow were weekly transfers of $2,000. Look at the recipient, Zola, I urged gently. She read the name. Crystal Miller. She frowned. Who is Crystal Miller? She is Dr. Pierce's head nurse, I said. She is also the woman Hunter was having breakfast with this morning. She is the woman he took to the velvet rope last night while you were at home waiting for him. Zola's face went pale. She flipped the page. The next sheet was a transcript of the text messages between Hunter and Pierce. The daughter is so stupid she does whatever I tell her. She is wrapping the noose around his neck and thinks she is tying a tie. I watched her read the words. I watched her eyes dart back and forth. I waited for the spark of recognition, for the anger, for the realization that she had married a monster who was using her as a pawn in a murder scheme. I waited for my daughter to come back to me. Look at how he talks about you, Zola, I whispered. He doesn't love you. He is using you to get to my land. He is stealing from us to pay for his mistress and his gambling debts. He is drowning, and he is using your head as a stepping stone to keep himself above water. The silence in the kitchen was thick and suffocating. Zola stared at the paper for a long, agonizing minute. Her hand started to tremble. Then she did something that broke my heart into 1,000 irreparable pieces. She laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, brittle sound bordering on hysteria. She looked up at me, and her eyes weren't filled with realization. They were filled with hate. You are pathetic, she spat. She grabbed the stack of papers and ripped them in half. Then she ripped them again, throwing the confetti of evidence into the air. "You made this up," she screamed, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. "You typed this up on your old computer because you can't stand to see me happy. You are jealous, Dad. You have always been jealous." "Jealous?" I asked, stunned. "Yes, jealous of Hunter, jealous of his ambition, jealous of his success. You hate that he dreams big while you were content fixing rusty engines for 40 years. You hate that he wants to give me a life you never could. He is trying to kill me, Zola," I shouted, losing my composure. "I showed you the video. You watched him put the powder in my drink." "It was sweetener," she shrieked, slamming her hands on the table. "He told me it was a special sweetener from Europe because he knows you are pre-diabetic. He was taking care of you and you twisted into some paranoid conspiracy because you are a lonely, bitter old man who wants to drag everyone down into his misery." I stared at her. The denial was so deep, so absolute, it was terrifying. She had rewritten reality to survive. She couldn't accept the truth because accepting the truth meant admitting she was married to a psychopath. "He is paying his mistress with my money," I said, my voice dropping to a defeated whisper. "He is investing," she yelled. "He told me about Crystal. She is a consultant. He pays her for medical advice to help you. You see how you twist everything." She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. She looked around the kitchen, her eyes wild. "We need that land, Dad," she said, her voice suddenly dropping to a desperate, pleading tone. "We need the money. You don't understand. Why?" I asked. "Why do you need it so badly that you would forge my name? Why is it worth my life?" Zola looked down at her stomach. She placed her hands over it, a protective, instinctive gesture that made the room spin around me. "Because I am pregnant," she whispered. The air left my lungs. "Pregnant?" "I am having a baby, Dad," she said, looking up with tears streaming down her face. "And I am not going to raise my child in a shack. I am not going to raise him counting pennies like we did. Hunter promised me. He promised that once the deal goes through, we will have enough for the best schools, the best life. He is doing this for us, for your grandchild." She took a step toward me. "Don't you want your grandchild to have a good life? Don't you want to help us? Or are you so selfish that you would rather sit on this dirt pile until you die than help your own family?" I looked at her stomach. My grandchild. A baby who hadn't even taken a breath yet, and already it was being used as a bargaining chip. It was being used as a human shield to justify theft and murder. Hunter knew. Of course he knew. That was why he was so confident. He knew Zola would never turn on him as long as she carried his child. He had anchored her to him with biology. The pain in my chest was real this time. It wasn't the poison, it was the grief of losing my daughter while she was standing right in front of me. She was gone. The Zola I knew had been consumed by the narrative Hunter had fed her. She truly believed that killing me was a necessary sacrifice for her unborn child's future. I realized then that I couldn't save her. Not today. Not with words. If I showed her more proof, she would just invent more lies to cover it up. She was an accomplice, not just in action, but in spirit. But the baby was innocent. If I let Hunter win, that child would grow up with a father who was a murderer and a mother who looked the other way. That child would be raised on blood money. That child would be used, manipulated, and destroyed just like Zola had been. I couldn't let that happen. I looked at Zola. I forced my face to become a mask of stone. I hid the heartbreak. I hid the love. I let her see only the stubborn old man she wanted to see. "Get out," I said. Zola blinked, surprised by the coldness in my voice. "Dad, Get out of my house," I repeated. "Go back to your husband. Tell him I am not dying. Tell him I am not selling. Tell him if he wants this land, he is going to have to come and take it from me himself." Zola's face hardened. She grabbed her purse. "Fine," she spat. "Be that way. But don't expect to see your grandchild. When this baby is born, you won't even get a picture. You are dead to us, Dad. You hear me? You are already dead." She turned and stormed out. The front door slammed shut, rattling the pictures on the walls, pictures of her graduation, her wedding memories of a life that was now ashes. I stood in the silence of the kitchen. My hands were fists at my sides. Dead to us. She didn't know how right she was. The Langston she knew, the gentle father who forgave every mistake, was dead. He had died the moment she tore up the truth and chose her abuser over her blood. But the grandfather wasn't dead. I walked to the window and watched her drive away. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I wasn't just fighting for Etta's memory, I was fighting for that unborn child. I had to destroy Hunter. I had to strip him of every dime, every lie, every ounce of power he held over my daughter. I had to ruin him so completely that Zola would have no choice but to wake up. I had to be the villain in her story so I could be the hero in the baby's. I went to the closet and retrieved the recorder I had hidden in the flower vase on the table. I pressed stop. I had everything. Her confession of the forgery, her admission that the money was the motive, her knowledge of the sweetener. I had enough to send her to prison alongside him. The thought made me sick, but I put the recorder in my pocket. I would do what I had to do. I looked at the clock. It was noon. Hunter had promised the loan sharks my death in 3 days. He was running out of time. And after Zola told him I was refusing to die quietly, he would be desperate. He wouldn't wait for the pills anymore. He would come for me. I walked down to the basement bunker. I opened the gun safe again. I took out the box of ammunition. "Come on, Hunter," I whispered to the empty room. "Come and get your inheritance." I sat in the dark, loading the revolver 1 bullet at a time. Click, click, click. I was done being patient. Tonight the wolf was coming to the door, and the shepherd was ready to slaughter him. The silence in my house at 2 in the morning was usually a comfort, a heavy blanket of peace I had earned after 40 years of noise in the machine shop. But tonight the silence was a weapon. It was a held breath waiting for the scream. I sat in the corner of my bedroom in my high-backed leather armchair. I was not in my bed. My bed was occupied by 3 pillows arranged under the quilt to resemble the shape of a sleeping old man. I was fully dressed in my dark work clothes, my boots laced tight. My hands rested on the arms of the chair. To my right, leaning against the wall, was a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. It was old, seasoned ashwood, the same bat I had kept behind the counter of my shop for decades. I checked my watch. It was 2:15. Hunter was late. I knew he was coming. The tracker on his car showed him parked 2 blocks away. He had walked the rest of the distance, likely cutting through the neighbor's yard to avoid the streetlights. He was desperate. The deadline for his loan sharks was sunrise. He needed me dead before the banks opened so he could claim his status as the grieving executor of the estate. He needed to sell my land to save his own skin. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. It was the 3rd board from the kitchen, the one that always groaned when the humidity was high. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My heart slowed down, sinking into the cold rhythmic beat of a predator waiting in the tall grass. This wasn't the first time I had waited in the dark for a man who wanted to kill me. The jungles of Vietnam had taught me patience. They had taught me that the man who moves first is usually the man who dies first. The door handle to my bedroom turned slowly. It was a brass knob, old and stiff. It whined softly as the latch disengaged. The door pushed open an inch, revealing a slice of the hallway illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the window. A shadow fell across the floor. Hunter slipped into the room. He was dressed in black, but it wasn't tactical gear. It was an expensive black tracksuit, the kind people wear to look athletic while drinking coffee. He wore gloves, leather driving gloves. In his right hand he clutched a large white pillow from the guest room. He moved toward the bed. His breathing was ragged loud in the stillness. He was terrified. He was sweating. I could smell the fear on him, a sour metallic scent that cut through his cologne. He wasn't a killer by nature. He was a killer by circumstance, a coward forced into a corner by his own greed. That made him dangerous. A professional does the job and leaves. A coward panics. A coward makes a mess. Hunter reached the side of the bed. He stared down at the lump under the covers. He raised the pillow with both hands. I saw his shoulders tense. He was psyching himself up. He was telling himself that this was necessary, that I was just an obstacle, that he was doing this for Zola, for the baby, for the future. He lunged. He brought the pillow down hard on the head of the dummy shape, putting his entire body weight behind it. He pressed down, grunting with exertion, holding the pillow over where my face should have been. I waited 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I reached out and flipped the switch on the industrial floodlight I had rigged on the nightstand next to me. The room exploded in blinding white light. It was 5,000 lumens of LED brilliance aimed directly at the bed. Hunter screamed. It wasn't a manly shout. It was a high-pitched shriek of pure terror. He recoiled, shielding his eyes, stumbling back from the bed. He dropped the pillow. He looked at the bed, blinking rapidly, his pupils pinpricks in the sudden glare. He saw the pillows. He saw that there was no body. "Hello, Hunter," I said. My voice was calm, deep, and echoing off the walls. He spun around, squinting into the corner where I sat. He couldn't see me clearly behind the wall of light, but he knew my voice. "Langston." He gasped. I stood up. I stepped out of the shadows, the baseball bat resting easily in my hand. "You are early," I said. "I thought you would wait until the pills finished the job. But I guess you don't have that kind of time, do you? Vinny wants his money." Hunter's face went from fear to shock to a twisted, ugly rage. He realized he had been played. He realized I wasn't sick. I wasn't senile. I was standing there strong and ready. "You knew," he whispered. "You knew the whole time." I took a step forward. "I knew you poisoned Etta. I knew you poisoned my tea. And I knew you were coming here tonight to finish what you started." Hunter looked at the door. It was blocked by my position. He looked at the window. It was closed. He looked at me, an old man with a bat. And then he looked at the pillow on the floor. He made a calculation. He was 32, fit, gym-toned. I was 71. He thought he had the advantage. He was wrong. "You should have just died," Hunter screamed. He charged. He lowered his shoulder and rushed me, aiming to tackle me to the ground. It was a football move, clumsy and telegraphed. He expected me to crumble. He expected bone-on-bone impact. I didn't block him. I stepped to the side, pivoting on my left heel, a move I had drilled 1,000 times in the dojo decades ago. As he rushed past, I brought the bat down, not on his head. I didn't want to kill him. I brought it down hard on the back of his thigh, right into the hamstring. The sound of the wood hitting muscle was a dull thud. Hunter howled and crashed into the dresser, knocking over photos of Zola. He scrambled to get up, his leg giving way. But adrenaline is a powerful drug. He roared and lunged again, this time swinging a wild haymaker punch at my face. I ducked. I felt the wind of his fist pass over my ear. He was faster than I remembered being at his age, but he had no discipline. He was fighting with anger. I was fighting with justice. I drove my fist into his gut. It wasn't a hard punch, not enough to break ribs, but enough to knock the wind out of him. He doubled over, gasping. I grabbed the collar of his expensive tracksuit and threw him backward. He tripped over the rug and landed hard on his back. I stood over him, the bat raised. "Stay down, son," I warned. Hunter looked up at me. His lip was bleeding. His eyes were wild. He reached into his pocket. For a second, I thought he had a gun. My grip tightened on the bat. I was ready to swing for the skull. He pulled out a knife. It was a small switchblade, the kind a teenager buys to look tough. The blade clicked open. "I am not going to jail, Langston," he shouted. "I am not losing everything to a mechanic." He scrambled to his feet and slashed at me. The blade caught my forearm. I felt the sting, the warm trickle of blood. It wasn't deep, but it woke up the beast inside me. He had drawn blood. Now the gloves were off. He lunged again, aiming for my stomach. I sidestepped, but this time I didn't just dodge. I swung the bat with everything I had. I aimed for his right arm, the one holding the knife. The impact was sickeningly loud. A sharp crack echoed through the room as the ash wood connected with his forearm. Hunter dropped the knife. He fell to his knees, clutching his arm, screaming in a voice that wasn't human. It was the sound of a broken animal. His arm hung at an unnatural angle. The bone was broken. I kicked the knife away. I placed the tip of the bat under his chin and forced his head up. He was sobbing snot and tears running down his face, mixing with the sweat of his exertion. "Please," he whimpered. "Please, Dad. I am sorry. I didn't mean it. It was the stress. Please don't kill me." I looked down at him. I could end it right here. I could crush his windpipe. I could claim self-defense. The knife was there. The break-in was evident. No jury in the world would convict an old man defending his home from an intruder. But death was too easy. Death was an escape. I wanted him to live. I wanted him to live with the fear. I wanted him to wake up every morning knowing I was out there. I wanted him to face the loan sharks, the police, the public shame. I wanted him to watch his empire crumble while he rotted in a cell. I leaned down, my face inches from his. "I am not going to kill you, Hunter," I hissed. "That would be a mercy you don't deserve." I pulled the bat away. I stepped back, opening the path to the door. "Get out." Hunter looked at me confused. He clutched his broken arm to his chest. You are letting me go." "Run," I said. "Run home to my daughter. Tell her you failed. Tell her I broke you, and then sit by the phone and wait. Because I am coming for you. Not with a bat, but with everything I have." Hunter didn't wait. He scrambled to his feet, groaning in pain. He stumbled toward the door, bouncing off the doorframe. He ran down the hallway, his footsteps heavy and uneven. I heard the front door slam open. I heard him running down the driveway, gasping for air. I walked to the window. I watched him limp toward his car, clutching his arm. He fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up with his good hand. He got in and sped away, tires screeching. I stood there in the silence. My arm was bleeding, my heart was racing, but I felt a cold satisfaction. He was gone, but he wasn't free. I turned to the bookshelf in the corner. Hidden between two books was a tiny camera lens. The red light was blinking steady. I walked over to it and stopped the recording. Every second of the attack, the pillow, the knife, the confession that he wasn't going to jail. It was all there in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. It was uploaded to a secure cloud server the moment it happened. I went to the bathroom and bandaged my arm. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked old. But my eyes were alive. I picked up my phone. I dialed Desmond. He came, I said. "Is it done?" Desmond asked. "He is alive," I said. "He has a broken arm and a terrified soul." But I let him run. Why? Because the hunt is more fun when the prey knows it is being chased, I said. And Desmond released the funds to the bank. Foreclose on his loans. I want him to wake up tomorrow morning homeless. Understood, Desmond said. And the video. Keep it safe, I said. That is for the grand finale. I hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, the adrenaline fading into a dull ache in my bones. I looked at the spot where he had tried to smother me. He thought this was over. He thought he had escaped. He had no idea. Tomorrow I was going to take away his money. The day after I was going to take away his freedom. But tonight I was going to sleep. For the first time in 2 years, I was going to sleep soundly, because tonight the monsters were afraid of me. The sun rose on Friday morning, casting long, harsh shadows across the city pavement. I sat in the back of Ray's unmarked van parked across the street from the First National Bank. On the monitor in front of us, the high-definition security feed from inside the lobby played out in real time. I had a front-row seat to the beginning of the end. At 9:15 precisely, Hunter's Porsche screeched into the bank's parking lot. He got out awkwardly, favoring his left side. His right arm was encased in a fresh white cast, a souvenir from our meeting in the dark. He looked like a man holding onto the edge of a cliff by his fingernails. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair messy, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses to cover the bruising from my fist. He didn't walk with his usual swagger. He marched with the frantic energy of a cornered rat. He burst through the double doors, bypassing the line of customers. He went straight to the teller window, slamming his good hand on the counter. I adjusted the volume on the receiver. "I need to make a withdrawal," Hunter barked, his voice cracking. "Cash, 50,000, now." The teller, a young woman who looked terrified, typed into her computer. Her face fell. "I am sorry, Mr. Sterling. I can't process this transaction." "What do you mean you can't?" Hunter shouted, making the security guard flinch. "I was approved for a loan yesterday. The funds are there. I checked the app." The teller swallowed hard. "Sir, your accounts have been flagged. There is a freeze on all assets associated with Sterling Tech and your personal social security number." "Freeze," Hunter screamed. "Who froze them?" "Get Henderson out here." I watched as Mr. Henderson, my branch manager, stepped out of his office. He looked calm. He looked prepared. He adjusted his tie and walked over to the counter. "Is there a problem?" Mr. Sterling Henderson asked. "You are damn right there is a problem," Hunter spat. "Why is my money locked? I have vendors to pay." "It is not your money," Mr. Sterling Henderson said, his voice loud enough for the lobby to hear. "The freeze was initiated by the primary lien holder, LP Holdings. They exercised the default clause in your contract this morning." Hunter froze. LP Holdings. He said the name like it was a foreign language. "Who the hell is LP Holdings?" "The private investment firm that funded your loan yesterday," Henderson explained. "The contract you signed, it stated that any evidence of insolvency or breach of good faith would trigger an immediate recall of the loan and seizure of collateral." "Breach of good faith." Hunter laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "I haven't done anything. I just signed the papers yesterday." Henderson slid a piece of paper across the counter. "We received a notification that Sterling Tech has 0 employees, 0 revenue, and significant undisclosed debt. That is fraud, Mr. Sterling. LP Holdings has invoked their right to secure their investment. They have seized everything." "Everything," Hunter whispered. "Your business accounts, your personal savings, your investment portfolio. It is all property of LP Holdings as of 8 a.m. this morning." "This is a mistake," Hunter stammered, backing away from the counter. "This is a computer glitch. I will sue you. I will sue everyone." He turned and ran. He didn't look at the people staring. He didn't apologize. He ran out of the bank like the building was on fire. I watched him on the external camera feed. He sprinted to his Porsche, fishing his keys from his pocket with his good hand. He jammed the key into the door. Nothing happened. He tried again. He pulled the handle. Locked. He looked around wildly. Then he saw it. A yellow boot clamped tight around the front driver's side wheel. And behind his car, a tow truck was backing up, the reverse beeper echoing in the morning air. A burly man in a reflective vest hopped out of the truck. "Hey," Hunter screamed, running toward him. "Get away from my car!" The tow truck driver held up a clipboard. "Repo order, buddy, from LP Holdings. This vehicle is collateral. Hand over the keys." "No," Hunter shrieked. He threw himself against the car door, shielding it with his body. "You can't take this. It is a lease." "Not anymore," the driver said, unhooking the winch. "The lease was bought out this morning. Now move or I call the cops." Hunter looked at the driver. He looked at the bank. He looked at his broken arm. The fight drained out of him. He slumped against the hood, sliding down until he was sitting on the asphalt. He threw the keys at the driver's feet. "Take it," he sobbed. "Just take it." I watched him sit there in the dirt, weeping. The man who had mocked my truck, who had called me a peasant, was now watching his status symbol being dragged away onto a flatbed. He had no car, he had no money, he had no power, but he still had his freedom. And that was a mistake he was about to use to dig his grave even deeper. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bug Ray had planted in Hunter's jacket collar during the break-in. I put on my headphones. Hunter was walking now. He was breathing heavy, muttering to himself. "LP Holdings," he whispered. "Who are they?" "Corporate raiders. A rival firm. They must have been watching me. They knew I was vulnerable." He stopped walking. I heard the sound of him dialing a number. "Pick up Zola. Pick up, you useless cow." Zola answered on the second ring. "Hunter. Where are you?" "The bank called. They said our joint account is empty. The mortgage payment bounced." "Shut up, Zola." Hunter shouted into the phone. "Listen to me. We are under attack. Someone is trying to hostile take over my company." They froze everything. They took the car. What? Zola sounded terrified. "Who? I don't know. Some group called LP Holdings. They must have hacked the contract. Listen, I need you to go to your dad's house. Now. My dad's house." "Why?" "Because I need that land." "Zola, I need to sell it today. I need cash to fight these lawyers." "Is he dead yet?" I gripped the edge of the console in the van. Even now, stripped of everything, his first instinct was to kill me. "I called him last night," Zola said, her voice trembling. He sounded sick, but he answered. "He isn't dead, Hunter." Hunter let out a scream of frustration that distorted the audio feed. "Then go over there and finish it," he roared. "Smother him. Push him down the stairs." "I don't care. I need that deed. I can't." "Hunter." Zola was crying now. "He knows. He showed me the papers. He knows about the nurse. He kicked me out. You told him." Hunter's voice went deadly quiet. "You told him about us. He already knew. He had pictures, Hunter. He is not senile. He is different. I think he knows everything." Hunter was silent for a long moment. I could hear the traffic passing him on the street. He was processing. He was realizing that his easy target was actually a fortress, but his arrogance wouldn't let him see the truth. He didn't think I was the mastermind. He thought I was just a stubborn old man who got lucky with a private investigator. He still couldn't conceive that LP Holdings, Langston Payne Holdings, was me. "Fine," Hunter said, his voice cold. "Forget your dad. He is a dead end. We need a new play. What are we going to do?" "Vinny called me, Hunter. He said if he doesn't get paid by Sunday..." "I know what he said," Hunter snapped. "I will handle Vinny. I just need capital. Fast capital." I heard him start walking again, his pace picking up. "I am going to launch the Phoenix Project," Hunter said. "The Phoenix Project?" Zola asked. "But that is just a concept. You haven't built anything. It is just a slide deck." "It doesn't matter," Hunter said. It is a billion-dollar idea. I will organize a gala, a massive launch party, tomorrow night. I will invite every angel investor, every venture capitalist in the city. I will sell pre-orders. I will sell equity. I just need one idiot to write a check for $1 million and we are saved. I pay off Vinny, I sue LP Holdings, and we win. But how can you host a gala with no money? I still have the company credit card for the catering deposit, Hunter said. It is a different bank. They might not have frozen it yet. And I have contacts. I will promise them the world. Hunter, this is dangerous. If you take their money for a product that doesn't exist, it is not dangerous. Zola, it is business. It is the only way out. Now stop crying and get me my good suit from the cleaners. I have calls to make. He hung up. I took off the headphones. I looked at Ray. He is going to throw a party, Ray said, shaking his head. He is doubling down on the fraud. He is desperate, I said. He thinks he can charm his way out of a bear trap. I leaned back in the seat. A gala. A room full of investors, press, and high society. A stage. A microphone. It was perfect. He wants to make a splash, I said. He wants to be the center of attention. I pulled out my phone and dialed Desmond. Clear your schedule for tomorrow night, Desmond, I said. We are going to a party. What kind of party? Desmond asked. A retirement party, I said. Hunter Sterling is about to announce his permanent exit from the business world, and I am going to be the keynote speaker. I looked at the monitor one last time. The bank lobby was empty. The show was over here. But the main event was just getting started. Hunter wanted to sell a lie to the world. I was going to make sure the world bought the truth instead, and the price tag was going to be his life. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a cavern of crystal and velvet illuminated by 1,000 LED lights that shifted color to match the mood of the music. It was 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and Hunter Sterling was throwing the party of the century on a credit card that was hours away from being declined. I sat in the back of a black SUV parked at the VIP entrance watching the live stream on a tablet. Ray had tapped into the hotel's event feed so I could see every second of the charade. Hunter had outdone himself. There were ice sculptures in the shape of phoenixes rising from ashes. There were waiters circulating with trays of caviar and champagne. There were huge screens projecting the logo of the Phoenix Project, a sleek minimalist design for a company that produced absolutely nothing but hot air. The room was packed. He had managed to drag out the city's elite, the venture capitalists looking for the next unicorn, the tech reporters hungry for a story, and the socialites who would go anywhere with an open bar. I adjusted the cuffs of my jacket. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't wearing flannel or denim. I was wearing a charcoal gray bespoke suit cut from Italian wool. It cost $5,000. I had bought it years ago for a board meeting in Zurich, but never wore it back home. To the people of this town, I was a mechanic. Tonight, I was going to show them I was the man who owned the bank that held their mortgages. Next to me, Desmond checked his watch. He looked sharp in his pinstripes, holding a leather briefcase that contained the legal equivalent of a nuclear bomb. On my other side was Sheriff Miller. He wasn't smiling. He had seen the evidence. He knew what Hunter had done. And in the front seat sat Ebony the waitress. She was nervous, twisting her hands in her lap, but she was here. She was my witness. She was the proof that this wasn't just a business dispute. It was attempted murder. On the screen, Hunter took the stage. The music swelled, then faded. A spotlight hit him. He looked every inch the visionary genius. His arm was in a black sling which he wore like a badge of honor. He had told people he was injured saving a child from a runaway car. Another lie to polish his halo. Welcome, friends, visionaries, and future partners. Hunter's voice boomed over the speakers, confident and smooth. Thank you for joining me on this historic night. Tonight, we are not just launching a company, we are launching a legacy. The crowd applauded politely. They were interested but skeptical. They needed to see the money. They needed to know this wasn't another smoke and mirrors show. Hunter knew it too. He smiled that shark smile I had learned to hate. But before I show you the technology, I want to introduce you to the heart of this operation. The reason I wake up every morning and fight for a better future. Please welcome my beautiful wife and the mother of my future child, Zola Sterling. Zola walked onto the stage. She wore a long, shimmering gown that accentuated her baby bump. She looked stunning but terrified. Her smile was brittle, held in place by sheer willpower. She waved to the crowd, but her eyes were dead. She was playing her part, the devoted wife, the anchor. Hunter put his good arm around her waist and kissed her cheek. The crowd cooed. It was a perfect picture of domestic bliss. We are building this for the next generation, Hunter said, patting Zola's stomach. But to build the future, we sometimes have to stand on the shoulders of the past. Here it comes, I whispered to the screen. Hunter's face turned somber. He looked down at the floor, then back up at the audience, his eyes glistening with fake tears. Many of you have asked about the funding for the Phoenix project. You have asked about the land required for our massive data center. I am proud to announce that the land has been secured. It is a pristine 400-acre tract just north of the city. A murmur went through the room. 400 acres. That was my land. That was Etta's land. This land belonged to my father-in-law, Langston Payne. Hunter continued, his voice dropping to a respectful hush. Langston is a simple man, a mechanic, a man who worked with his hands his whole life, but sadly time comes for us all. He paused, letting the silence build. It breaks my heart to tell you that Langston has been battling a severe degenerative cognitive decline. Dementia is a cruel thief. In recent weeks, it has become clear that he can no longer manage his own affairs. He is confused. He is frail. He often doesn't recognize his own daughter. Zola looked down at the floor. She didn't contradict him. She let him paint me as a senile invalid while she stood there in diamonds bought with stolen money. Yesterday, in a moment of clarity, Langston made a decision. Hunter lied seamlessly. He signed over the full power of attorney and the deed to the land to me and Zola. He wanted his legacy to be this project. He wanted his land to birth the future since he can no longer be a part of it. The crowd erupted in applause. They clapped for the noble sacrifice of the old man. They clapped for the dutiful son-in-law taking up the mantle. So Hunter shouted over the applause, raising his good arm. I am proud to announce that the Phoenix project is fully capitalized with assets totaling $4 million. We are open for business. The investors began to pull out their checkbooks. The reporters started typing on their phones. He had done it. He had sold the lie. I looked at the sheriff. It is time. We got out of the SUV. The valet looked at us confused by the mix of a high-end suit and a police uniform. We didn't stop. We walked through the revolving doors into the lobby. The music from the ballroom thumped against the walls. We marched down the hallway. I didn't need a cane. I didn't have a limp. I walked with the stride of a man who had marched through jungles and boardrooms. 2 security guards stood at the ballroom doors. They stepped forward to block us. "Private event, sir," one of them said. Desmond stepped forward, flashing a court order. "This is a crime scene investigation. Step aside or be charged with obstruction." The guards looked at the sheriff. They stepped aside. I reached out and placed my hands on the double doors. I could hear Hunter's voice inside gloating. "This is just the beginning," he was saying. I pushed the doors open. They swung wide, crashing against the walls with a sound like thunder. The noise in the room died instantly. The music cut off. All heads turned toward the entrance. Hunter stood on the stage mid-gesture. His mouth hung open. Zola gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I stood in the doorway, framed by the light from the lobby. I wasn't the mechanic in greasy overalls. I was a vision of vengeance in charcoal wool. The silence stretched out tight as a piano wire. I walked into the room. My footsteps on the marble floor echoed in the stillness. Click, click, click. I walked straight down the center aisle. The crowd parted for me, confusion rippling through them. Who was this man? Was this a surprise guest? I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes locked on Hunter. I saw the blood drain from his face. I saw the terror replace the arrogance. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Security!" Hunter shrieked, his voice cracking. "Security! Get him out!" It is the old man. He is confused. He escaped the nursing home. "Get him out!" No one moved. They were looking at my suit. They were looking at the sheriff walking 2 steps behind me. They were looking at the clarity in my eyes. Senile old men don't wear Armani. They don't walk with the focused intensity of a predator. I reached the stairs to the stage. I walked up them slowly, deliberately. Hunter backed away, stumbling over a microphone stand. Zola was frozen, tears starting to stream down her face. I walked up to the podium. Hunter was shaking his head, mouthing the word "no" over and over again. I reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He didn't fight me. He was too paralyzed by the impossibility of what he was seeing. I turned to the crowd. I looked at the investors, the press, the socialites. "Good evening," I said. My voice was deep, calm, and commanding. It filled the room without a tremor. "I am Langston Payne." A gasp went through the room. This was the invalid. This was the man with dementia. I am the man. This liar just told you was mentally incompetent. I continued, pointing a finger at Hunter without looking at him. "I am the man," he said, "signed over his land." I reached into my inside pocket. Hunter flinched, thinking I had a weapon. I pulled out a folded document. "I did not sign over my land," I said, holding the paper up. "What I signed yesterday was a confession of debt, a personal guarantee that puts everything Hunter Sterling owns or will ever own into my possession." I tossed the paper onto the podium. "There is no Phoenix project," I said. "There is no capital. There is no land deal. The only thing Hunter Sterling owns right now is a stolen suit and a mountain of debt." Hunter lunged forward, desperation overriding his fear. "He is lying," Hunter screamed, grabbing for the mic. "He is crazy. The pills. He didn't take his pills." The sheriff stepped forward, his hand on his holster. "Step back, Mr. Sterling." Hunter froze. I looked at the crowd again. "He told you I was sick," I said. "He told you I was dying." And he was right about one thing. I was dying, but not from old age. I gestured to the back of the room. Desmond hit a button on his laptop, which was connected to the room's projection system. The logo of the Phoenix Project disappeared from the massive screen behind me. It was replaced by black and white footage. It was the video from the restaurant. The crowd watched in horrified silence. They saw Hunter look around. They saw him pull out the packet. They saw him pour the white powder into my tea. They saw him stir it. And they saw Zola watch him do it. A collective sound of disgust filled the room. People covered their mouths. "That is not sugar," I said, my voice turning hard as steel. "That is digoxin, a heart medication, a poison." The video changed. Now it was a slideshow of chat logs. The texts between Hunter and Dr. Pierce. "The old black man is tougher than he looks. Increase the dose. Make him confused." Then came the audio. Hunter's voice, loud and clear, booming through the speakers. 3 days. The old man will be dead in 3 days. I guarantee it. I will pull the plug myself if I have to." The room was in chaos. Investors were shouting. Reporters were taking photos of the screen. Hunter looked at the screen, then at me. He looked like a trapped animal. He looked at Zola. "She did it," he screamed, pointing at his pregnant wife. "It was her idea. She wanted the money. She hates him. She told me to do it." Zola let out a wail that sounded like something breaking. "No, Hunter. You said it was medicine. You said it would help him." "Liar," Hunter yelled. "You forged the signature. You stole the money. I watched them turn on each other. The perfect couple, the future of the industry, tearing each other apart like rats in a bucket." I turned to the sheriff. "Sheriff Miller," I said, "I would like to press charges." "For what?" The sheriff asked loudly for the benefit of the crowd. "Attempted murder," I said. "Fraud, elder abuse, and..." I paused, looking at the screen where a new document had appeared. It was Etta's death certificate next to the toxicology report we had run on her preserved hair sample this morning. "And the first-degree murder of Etta Payne." I finished. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Hunter tried to run. He bolted for the side exit, shoving Zola out of the way, but he didn't get far. Ray stepped out from the curtains where he had been waiting. He stuck out a foot. Hunter tripped and crashed to the floor, his cast hitting the wood with a crack. Before he could get up, the sheriff was on him. "You have the right to remain silent," the sheriff shouted, cuffing Hunter's good hand to his bad one. I looked at Zola. She was standing alone on the stage, surrounded by the wreckage of her life. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Dad," she whispered. "I didn't know about Mom. I swear." I looked at her. I looked at the belly that held my grandchild. And then I looked at the video still playing on the screen where she pushed the poisoned glass toward my hand. "You knew enough," I said. I turned my back on her. I walked to the edge of the stage. The crowd parted for me again, but this time it wasn't out of confusion. It was out of respect and fear. I walked out of the ballroom, leaving the screams and the flashing lights behind me. I didn't look back. I had reclaimed my name. I had avenged my wife, and I had exposed the devil in the designer suit. The party was over, but the reckoning had just begun. "Get this man out of here," Hunter screamed, his voice cracking under the weight of his own panic. He pointed a trembling finger at me, his face slick with sweat under the stage lights. "Security, do your jobs. He is dangerous. He is having an episode." Two uniformed private security guards started toward the stage, their hands hovering near their belts. But before they could take 3 steps, Sheriff Miller stepped into the aisle. He didn't draw his weapon. He simply held up a hand, palm out. "Sit down," the sheriff boomed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "This is an active investigation. Anyone who interferes with Mr. Payne will be arrested for obstruction of justice." The guards froze. They looked at Hunter, then at the sheriff, and they made the smart choice. They backed away, melting into the shadows. Hunter stood alone on the podium, the master of ceremonies for his own funeral. He looked at Zola, desperate for an ally. "Zola, say something," he pleaded, his microphone picking up the frantic whisper. "Tell them he is sick. Tell them he doesn't know what he is doing." Zola just stared at me. Her hands were clutching her stomach, her eyes wide with shock. She couldn't speak. She was watching the father she had betrayed walk toward her, not as a victim, but as a judge. I climbed the stairs to the stage. My Italian leather shoes clicked rhythmically on the wood. Every step was a hammer blow to Hunter's facade. I reached the podium. Hunter recoiled as if I were radioactive, stumbling back until he hit the projection screen behind him. I didn't look at him. I reached out and took the microphone from the stand. It felt heavy, cold, and powerful. I turned to face the room. 500 faces stared back at me. These were the titans of industry, the people Hunter wanted to impress, the people he had lied to. "I am not confused," I said, my voice deep and steady, filling the cavernous room without a tremor. "And I am not lost. I am exactly where I need to be." Hunter lunged forward, trying to grab the mic. "Stop it, you old fool, you are ruining everything." I didn't even flinch. I simply sidestepped and let his own momentum carry him past me. He stumbled, almost falling off the front of the stage, catching himself on a monitor speaker. He looked pathetic. A child in a man's suit throwing a tantrum. I turned back to the crowd. "This man told you I was senile," I said, pointing at Hunter. "He told you I gave him my land. He told you he was building the future. But the only thing Hunter Sterling knows how to build is a coffin." I raised my hand and signaled to the back of the room. Desmond, my lawyer, was standing by the sound booth. He nodded once and hit a key on his laptop. The massive screen behind me, which had been displaying the sleek logo of the Phoenix Project, flickered and went black. A low hum filled the room. Then a video feed appeared. It was grainy black and white footage taken from a high angle. I stepped aside so everyone could see. It was the restaurant. Table 4. A collective murmur went through the crowd as they recognized Hunter and Zola on the screen. They looked happy, intimate. Then they saw me get up and leave the table. "Watch closely," I said into the microphone. On the screen, Hunter looked around. He checked the waiters. He checked the door. Then, with the speed of a magician, he pulled the white packet from his pocket. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. He poured the powder into my iced tea. He stirred it. He wiped the straw. And then Zola looked up. On the massive screen, her face was 10 feet tall. Everyone saw her eyes follow his hands. Everyone saw her watch the poison dissolve. Everyone saw her say nothing. A woman in the front row gasped, covering her mouth with a jeweled hand. A man near the back stood up, knocking his chair over. "That is not sugar," I said, my voice cutting through the shock. "That is digoxin, a heart medication. Administered to a man with a healthy heart, it induces cardiac arrest. It mimics natural death." The video cut to black. Hunter was shaking his head violently, his back against the wall. "No, that is a deepfake. It is AI. He made it up. He is trying to frame me." But the show wasn't over. "Audio only," I commanded. The speakers crackled. Then Hunter's voice filled the ballroom, loud, clear, and undeniable. "The old black man is tougher than he looks. Increase the dose. Dry him out. Make him confused. I need him dead before the 30th. The investors in the VIP section looked at each other with horror. This wasn't a business deal gone wrong. This was a snuff film. "My father-in-law is a stubborn animal," the recording continued. "Just a few more days and we sell the dirt he lives on. He is worth more dead than he ever was alive." Hunter slid down the wall, sitting on the floor, his hands covering his ears. Stop it, turn it off." I didn't turn it off. I had one more thing to show them. The screen lit up again. This time it wasn't a video. It was a document, a death certificate. Name Etta Payne. Cause of death cardiac arrest. Next to it a toxicology report dated yesterday. Name Etta Payne. Sample hair follicle. Result positive for lethal levels of digoxin. 2 years ago my wife died. I said, my voice breaking for the first time. We thought it was nature. We thought it was God calling her home. But it wasn't God. I pointed at Hunter. It was him. He practiced on her. He killed my wife to test his weapon, and when the money ran out, he decided to use it on me. The reaction in the room was visceral. It wasn't just shock anymore. It was revulsion. It was the kind of anger that turns a crowd into a mob. People started shouting. Some were recording with their phones, their faces lit by the glow of the screens broadcasting Hunter's crimes to the world. Others were rushing for the exits, desperate to distance themselves from the monster on stage. The investors, the men who had been ready to write million-dollar checks, were scrambling to get their coats. One of them, a prominent venture capitalist, walked up to the edge of the stage. He looked at Hunter with pure disgust. "You are finished, Sterling," he spat. "You are done." Zola stood in the center of the stage, frozen like a statue. She looked at the screen where her mother's death certificate was displayed next to the poison report. She looked at the video loop of her pushing the glass toward me. She realized then that there was no hiding. She realized that everyone knew, her friends, her social circle, the entire city. They saw her not as the victim, but as the accomplice. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Dad," she whispered, but her voice was lost in the noise of the crowd. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had carried my grandchild into a den of wolves. "Don't," I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the air between us. "Don't call me that. You lost the right to that name when you watched him poison my tea." Hunter suddenly scrambled to his feet. The fight-or-flight instinct had finally kicked in, overriding his shame. He looked at the sheriff blocking the main exit. He looked at the angry crowd blocking the stage stairs. He looked at Zola. It was her idea, he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at his pregnant wife. His voice was high, hysterical. "She told me to do it. She hated them. She wanted the inheritance. She made me buy the pills." Zola recoiled as if he had slapped her. "What? No, Hunter, you said it was medicine. You said you were helping them." "Liar," Hunter yelled, his face twisted and ugly. "You forged the signatures. You stole the money from the bank. You told me to finish him off last night. You are the one who wanted him dead." The crowd watched in morbid fascination as the rats turned on each other. It was the final piece of evidence. His willingness to sacrifice his wife and unborn child to save his own skin was the ultimate proof of his character. "Sheriff," I said into the microphone, my voice final, "take them." Sheriff Miller signaled to his deputies. They swarmed the stage. Hunter tried to run. He bolted toward the side curtain, heading for the service exit. But he forgot about his broken arm. He forgot about his balance. He tripped over a cable and went down hard, screaming as he landed on his injury. The deputies were on him in seconds. They hauled him up, cuffing his good hand to his belt loop. He was sobbing, begging, blaming everyone but himself. Another deputy approached Zola. He was gentler but firm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us too." Zola looked at me one last time as the deputy took her arm. She didn't ask for help. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just looked at me with the realization that she had chosen a murderer over a father, and now she was going to pay the price alone. I watched them drag Hunter away, kicking and screaming through the same doors he had entered as a king. I watched Zola walk out, her head bowed, her hand on her stomach. The room was almost empty now. The music was gone. The lights were harsh. I stood on the stage alone. I had won. I had exposed them. I had saved my life. But as I looked at the empty ballroom, I didn't feel like a victor. I felt like a man who had just survived a war. I was standing in the rubble of my family. I put the microphone down. It made a loud thud that echoed in the silence. I walked down the stairs. Ebony was waiting for me at the bottom. She had tears in her eyes. "You did it, Mr. Payne," she said softly. I nodded. Yes, I did. I adjusted my suit jacket. I straightened my tie. "Now comes the hard part," I said. "What is that?" Ebony asked. "Living with the silence," I said. I walked out of the hotel into the cool night air. The sirens were fading in the distance. The city was quiet. I got into the back of the sheriff's car, not as a suspect, but as a witness. The nightmare was over. But the long, lonely morning was just beginning. The chaos in the ballroom was absolute, but my eyes were fixed on the stage where the final act of this tragedy was playing out. Hunter was on the floor, his expensive suit ruined, his face pressed against the hardwood by the knee of a deputy sheriff. The arrogance that had defined him for years had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified animal willing to chew through its own leg to escape the trap. He wasn't screaming in pain, he was screaming in betrayal. The man who had sworn to protect my daughter, who had stood at the altar and promised to cherish her, was now trying to sell her freedom to buy his own. It was her idea, Hunter shrieked, his voice high and shrill, cutting through the murmurs of the shocked crowd. He twisted his head, trying to look at the sheriff, trying to find anyone who would listen to his lies. Zola planned it all. She hates her father. She told me he was too old. She told me he was useless. She said we needed the money for the baby. I watched him struggle against the handcuffs, the metal clicking shut, with a sound that felt like a gavel striking a sounding block. He was frantic, spitting words out like venom. She forged the signatures. Hunter yelled, his eyes wild. Check the bank records. She knew how to sign his name. She practiced it for weeks. She told me the old man was going to die anyway, she said. We were just speeding up nature. She made me buy the pills. The crowd watched in horrified silence. This was the man they had applauded minutes ago, the visionary, the future of tech. Now he was nothing more than a coward pointing a finger at his pregnant wife. He was trying to rewrite history in real time, hoping that if he screamed loud enough, the truth would drown in the noise. But the evidence on the screen behind me didn't lie. The audio of his voice boasting about killing me didn't lie. I looked at him with nothing but pity. A man is defined by how he stands in the storm. Hunter was showing the world that he was made of paper and greed. He was willing to send the mother of his child to prison if it meant he could spend one less day behind bars. The deputies hauled him to his feet. He was sobbing now, snot running down his face, his legs dragging. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Langston, tell them, Hunter begged. Tell them Zola manipulated me. I just wanted to help the family. She is the one who is cold. She is the one who didn't cry when her mother died. I didn't answer him. I didn't even blink. I just watched as they dragged him toward the side exit. His accusations echoed off the walls, hanging in the air like a foul smell. He was trying to infect Zola with his guilt, trying to pull her down into the abyss he had dug for himself. And then there was Zola. She stood alone in the center of the stage, the spotlight hitting her like an interrogation lamp. She had heard every word Hunter said. She had heard the man she loved accuse her of murder. She looked at the empty space where he had been dragged away, and then she looked at me. The realization of her total isolation crashed down on her. Her husband had turned on her. Her father had exposed her. Her society friends in the audience were looking at her with revulsion. Her knees gave out. It wasn't a theatrical faint, it was a collapse. The strength left her legs, and she sank to the floor, her heavy dress pooling around her. She didn't try to stand. She crawled. She crawled across the polished wood of the stage toward me. She looked small, broken. The pregnancy bump was prominent, a reminder of the innocent life caught in this web of deceit. She reached my feet and wrapped her arms around my legs, burying her face in the fabric of my suit. She was sobbing uncontrollably, her body shaking with the force of her grief. "Daddy, please," she wailed. Her voice was muffled, a sound of pure misery. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. I didn't know he would say those things. I didn't know he hated me." I looked down at the top of her head. I remembered braiding her hair when she was 5 years old, sitting on the front porch while Etta cooked dinner. I remembered walking her down the aisle, giving her hand to the man who had just tried to destroy us. I felt a phantom pain in my chest, a desire to reach down and stroke her hair to tell her it would be okay. That was what a father did. A father protected, but a father also taught consequences. I didn't move. I didn't touch her. I stood rigid, a statue of judgment. "You didn't know he hated you." I asked, my voice quiet but amplified by the microphone I still held in my hand. "But you knew he hated me. You knew he hated your mother. You watched him pour poison into my cup, Zola. You pushed the glass toward my hand. No, Daddy." I was scared, she cried, looking up at me, her face streaked with mascara. "He said it was for us. He said we had no choice. I was just trying to be a good wife." "A good wife." I repeated the words, tasting like ash. "You were a good wife to a murderer. But you were a terrible daughter. And you were a terrible mother." Zola flinched as if I had struck her. She clutched her stomach. "No, don't say that I did it for the baby. I wanted him to have everything." "You wanted him to have money," I corrected her. "You wanted him to have a legacy built on the bones of his grandparents." What kind of mother builds a nursery with blood money, Zola? What kind of mother lets a killer hold her child? She wept harder, clinging to my legs. Please, Daddy, forgive me. I will testify. I will tell them everything. Just don't let them take me. I can't have my baby in jail. Please, Daddy, help me. I looked out at the audience. They were silent, watching the tragedy unfold. They saw a weeping pregnant woman begging her father for mercy. Some of them probably felt sorry for her. Some of them probably thought I was cruel, but they hadn't seen Etta die. They hadn't seen the life drain from my wife's eyes while Hunter smiled and Zola tried on her jewelry. They hadn't felt the burning in their own veins as the poison took hold. I reached down and gently but firmly removed her hands from my legs. I stepped back, creating a distance between us that was wider than the ocean. I can forgive stupidity, Zola, I said, my voice cracking with the strain of holding back my own tears. I can forgive fear. I can forgive mistakes, but I cannot forgive cruelty. You watched your mother die. You saw her pain, and you let him do it again to me. That is not a mistake. That is a choice. Zola looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror. Daddy, please, you chose him, I said. You chose the lie. Now you have to live with it. I looked at the sheriff, who was waiting respectfully at the edge of the stage. I nodded to him. Take her, I said. 2 female deputies stepped forward. They were gentle but efficient. They pulled Zola to her feet. She screamed, reaching for me, her hands clawing at the air. Daddy, no, don't let them take me. I am your daughter. I am your little girl. You are not my little girl, I whispered to myself. The words lost in her screams. My little girl died a long time ago. You are just a stranger who wears her face. You will birth your child in prison. Zola, I said loud enough for her to hear as they dragged her away. And that child will be better off without you. I will make sure of it. Her screams faded as they pulled her through the side doors, the same doors Hunter had been dragged through moments before. The heavy doors swung shut, cutting off the sound of her pleading. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. I stood alone on the stage. The bright lights were hot on my face. Cameras were flashing, blinding me with bursts of white light. The reporters were shouting questions, their voices merging into a roar of noise. Mr. Payne, how did you know? Mr. Payne. What will happen to the company, Mr. Payne? Do you have a comment on your daughter's arrest? I didn't answer them. I couldn't. My throat was closed tight, my chest aching with a pain that no medicine could fix. I looked out at the sea of faces, but I didn't see them. I saw darkness. I saw the empty house waiting for me. I saw Etta's chair in the living room, the one that would never be filled again. I had won. I had exposed the truth. I had saved my life and avenged my wife. I had reclaimed my assets and destroyed my enemies. By every definition of the word, I was the victor. But as I stood there surrounded by the trappings of wealth and power, I felt poorer than I had ever felt in my life. I had $15 million in the bank and not a single person to share it with. I had a 400-acre estate and an empty dinner table. I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening thud, signaling the end of the show. I turned my back on the crowd. I walked toward the back of the stage, away from the lights, away from the applause, away from the judgment. Desmond was waiting for me in the wings. He looked at me with sad eyes. He didn't offer congratulations. He knew what this had cost. Let's go home, Langston, he said softly. I nodded. Yes, home. But as we walked out into the cool night air, leaving the shattered remains of my family behind, I knew the truth. I didn't have a home anymore. I just had a house filled with ghosts. And the silence was going to be the loudest thing I had ever heard. The baby in my arms smelled like talcum powder and new hope, a scent that was a stark contrast to the antiseptic smell of the courtroom that had lingered in my nose for months. His name was Miles. He was 6 months old with eyes that held the same deep knowing spark that his grandmother Etta had possessed. I sat in the rocking chair on the back porch, the wood creaking a familiar rhythm as the morning sun warmed us both. It had been exactly 1 year since the night at the Ritz-Carlton, since the night I burned down the facade of the Sterling family to save the foundation of my own. Looking at Miles gurgling and reaching for my finger, it was hard to believe he had been born in a prison infirmary. Zola had gone into labor 2 weeks early, brought on by the stress of the sentencing hearing. I had petitioned the court immediately. With my resources and the undeniable evidence of the unstable environment he would be born into, I was granted full custody. The judge saw what I saw, a child who needed protection from the sins of his parents. The legal battle had been swift but brutal. The video evidence was irrefutable. Hunter Sterling, the man who thought he could outsmart the world, was currently sitting in a maximum security cell in the state penitentiary. He had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder of Etta Payne and the attempted murder of Langston Payne. I had been there when the gavel came down. Hunter didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stared at the wall, a hollow shell of a man who had gambled his soul and lost everything. Zola fared little better. The jury had seen her hesitation in the video, the way she watched the poison go into the glass. They saw her complicity. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and elder abuse. I visited her once after the baby was born to sign the custody papers. She didn't ask to hold him. She just signed the document, her hand shaking, and told me to make sure he never knew who his father was. I told her I would make sure he knew exactly who his father was so he would never make the same mistakes. I looked down at Miles. He was heavy, a solid weight in my arms. He was my second chance. I had failed Zola by protecting her too much, by letting her believe the world was soft. I would not fail Miles. I would teach him to build engines. I would teach him to value the dirt under his fingernails. And I would teach him that character is the only currency that matters. The sound of a car coming up the driveway pulled me from my thoughts. It was time. I stood up, my knees protesting only slightly. I was 72 now, but I felt stronger than I had in years. The poison was gone from my system, and the toxic people were gone from my life. I walked inside and placed Miles in his carrier. I grabbed my suit jacket. It was the same charcoal Armani suit I had worn the night of the gala. It had become my armor, my uniform for the days when I needed to be Langston Payne the tycoon, not Langston Payne the mechanic. We drove into the city. I didn't take the limousine or the luxury sedan I had bought for business meetings. I took the old Ford pickup. It rattled and hummed a comforting song of survival. Miles slept in the back seat, secure in his high-end safety seat, the only modern luxury in the cab. We pulled up to the University Law School. The campus was bustling with students full of energy and ambition. I parked the truck in a reserved spot right next to the dean's Jaguar. The contrast made me smile. I walked into the auditorium carrying Miles. The room was packed. Students, faculty, and press filled every seat. They were there for the inaugural ceremony of the Etta Payne Legal Defense Scholarship. I walked to the front row. Desmond was there saving me a seat. He smiled when he saw the baby. "He looks like you." "Langston," Desmond said. "Poor kid," I joked. "Hopefully he gets his grandmother's brains." The dean took the podium. He spoke about justice, about the importance of fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. He spoke about Etta, and then he called my name. I walked up to the stage with Miles in one arm. The crowd went silent out of respect. I didn't need a microphone to be heard. My wife Etta believed in truth, I said. She believed that the law should be a shield, not a sword for the greedy. She was taken from me by people who thought they were above the law. I paused, looking out at the sea of young faces. But justice is not just about punishing the guilty. It is about lifting up the innocent. It is about finding the people who have the courage to speak when everyone else is silent. I looked toward the wings of the stage. 1 year ago, a young woman saved my life, I said. She risked her job, her safety, and her future to show me the truth. She worked double shifts waiting tables to pay for law school. She is the definition of integrity. Ebony walked out onto the stage. She was wearing a graduation gown, having finished her undergraduate degree. She looked stunning, confident, and radiant. She wasn't the terrified waitress in the back office anymore. She was a force of nature. "I am proud to award the first full-ride Etta Payne Scholarship to Ebony Jackson," I announced. "This scholarship covers tuition, housing, and expenses for the entirety of her law degree. And upon graduation, a junior partnership awaits her at the firm of Vance and Payne." Ebony covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. The crowd erupted in applause. She walked over to me and I hugged her tight, holding her and Miles at the same time. "Thank you, Mr. Payne," she whispered into my ear. "You changed my life." "You saved mine first," I whispered back. "You are the daughter I should have had, Ebony. Make me proud." "I will," she promised. I watched her walk to the podium to give her acceptance speech. She spoke with passion, with fire. She talked about protecting the vulnerable, about standing up to power. As I listened, I knew my legacy was safe. I had lost a daughter to greed, but I had gained a daughter through honor. After the ceremony, we walked back to the truck. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was the kind of evening Etta loved. "We have one more stop, little man," I said to Miles as I buckled him in. I drove out of the city, away from the noise and the concrete. I drove toward the rolling hills of the countryside, toward the small, quiet cemetery where my family plot lay. The gates were open. I drove slowly along the gravel path, parking under the shade of a massive oak tree. I got out and lifted Miles from his seat. The air was cool and fresh, smelling of rain and earth. I walked to Etta's grave. For 2 years coming here had been a source of agony, a reminder of the mystery of her death. But today it felt different. The headstone was clean, polished marble, shining in the twilight. I knelt down, placing Miles on the soft grass beside me. He reached out, patting the cold stone with his tiny hand. "Hello, my love," I said softly. I reached into the bed of the truck and pulled out a large bouquet. They weren't store-bought flowers. They were roses I had grown myself in the garden she had planted, deep red, velvety, and full of life. I arranged them in the vase attached to the stone. "I brought someone to meet you," I said, gesturing to the baby. "This is Miles. He has your eyes, Etta, and he has your spirit. I am raising him to know you. I am raising him to be a good man." I paused, touching the letters of her name carved into the stone. "I did it, Etta," I whispered. "I cleaned up the trash. Hunter is gone. He will never hurt anyone again. The poison is gone from our lives." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree like a sigh of relief. I felt a peace settle over me, a lightness I hadn't felt in decades. "I sold the south pasture," I told her, "the one Hunter wanted so badly. I donated the money to the hospital to build a new cardiac wing in your name. They are going to save lives, Etta. His greed is going to heal people." I looked at Miles, who was laughing at a butterfly fluttering near the roses. "It is just us now," I said. "Just the roses and the boy. The weeds are gone." I sat there for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon. I thought about the betrayal, the pain, the violence. But as I looked at my grandson and the grave of the woman who had taught me how to love, I realized that the anger was gone. It had burned itself out, leaving only clarity. I picked up Miles, holding him close. He rested his head on my shoulder, sleepy and content. "Let's go home," I said to him. I walked back to the truck, my boots crunching on the gravel. I put Miles in his seat and climbed behind the wheel. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The face looking back was older, lined with scars both visible and invisible, but the eyes were clear. The eyes were happy. I started the engine, the old Ford roaring to life one more time. I turned the headlights on, cutting through the gathering dark. I drove out of the cemetery, leaving the dead to rest. I had a life to live. I had a grandson to raise. I had a garden to tend. And as I drove down the winding road toward the house that was finally safe again, I smiled. It was a small, quiet smile. The smile of a man who had walked through the fire and came out the other side, holding the only thing that mattered: the future. I learned that blood does not guarantee loyalty, and silence does not mean weakness. For years I hid my success to teach my daughter humility, but I failed to see that greed can rot a soul regardless of upbringing. True wealth isn't the millions sitting in a vault. It is the integrity you carry when the world isn't watching. I lost a daughter to the darkness of avarice, but I gained a true family through shared values with Ebony and Desmond. We must be willing to prune the dead branches from our family tree to let the new growth survive. Love is not blind acceptance. Sometimes the greatest act of love is having the strength to protect the innocent from the wolves, even if those wolves share your last name. If you enjoyed seeing justice served cold, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of redemption and revenge. Let me know in the comments. Would you have forgiven Zola for the sake of the baby, or did Langston make the right choice? I read every single one of you. Until next time.